We want to welcome everyone to this meeting of the Neighborhood and Community Development Standing Committee. Public comment is welcome. Anyone wishing to speak on any item on the Standing Committee agenda may do so when that item is up for discussion. You will have 5 minutes to make your comments. We ask that you please come forward. If you wish to make a comment, be recognized by myself, and then you'll make your comments from the podium, which is here in the middle of the room. For accurate recording purposes, we ask that everyone present please speak as directly as possible into a microphone. Roll call, please.
Roll call. Walters.
Here.
Regia. Townsend.
Here.
Walker.
Here.
McKiernan.
Here. First item on our agenda tonight is approval of the minutes from our meeting of November the 3rd.
Move for approval.
Second.
There's been a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say nay. The ayes have it. The minutes are approved as submitted. Takes us to our committee agenda. Item number 1 on our committee agenda tonight is discussion of potential planning-related projects, and that will be presented to us by Mr. Richardson.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here tonight.
Oh.
That's right into the microphone, by the way. Sorry, I'll back off a little bit.
I love it. He's got that first of the year enthusiasm going, doesn't he?
That's right. Well, I'm excited because a lot of commissioners and other community folks have talked to me about planning projects recently in different ways we can make our community better through the planning and zoning process and through code refinements and things like that. And so many, in fact, that I'm at a little bit of a quandary to how to get them all accomplished. And so I've presented them to you here this evening. There are 19 items on the list, and I'll just go through them briefly. The first 3 are items that have somewhat of an amount of funding identified. The first is the Rosedale Master Plan update, and you can see that we anticipate most of that being grant funded. The mayor, Commissioner Murguia, Rosedale Development are working on that project with the KU entities, the KU Medical School, the University of Kansas Hospital, and the KU Endowment. And that would be a revision to the 2005 Rosedale Master Plan. The second one is K32 Corridor Plan. This is something that we applied for with the help of Commissioner Walters and the cities of Bonner Springs and Edwardsville at the Mid-America Regional Council. We've received that, and that process is going to be getting underway. Our first meetings with Mark as far as consultant selection and those kind of things are here in January. The third item on here is a project I've been working towards with the mayor and our economic development folks, and this is a piece of software that's on the internet that allows us to let people say, I want to build or open a bistro in Kansas City, Kansas, and it will show them the zoning on a map, where the zoning is available to build that, and it will show them a list of for sale and for lease and UG land bank properties that they could purchase or lease to open that, whatever land use or business that they wanted to open. That accomplishes a couple of things. One, it helps, I think it's very business friendly and innovative. We'd be the first ones in the metro area to have something like that. It gets land bank properties out on the internet, and it helps to advertise other UG properties and any other properties that are for sale or for lease. So I think it's a great economic development tool, and WYDEC has agreed to put some money in that if we get that going. I'm working with them to make sure that the land bank properties can be part of that, and they're working on that kind of as we speak. I should get an update on that in the next week or so. The next series of projects are what I call smaller staff level projects. We're working on historic environments ordinance review. That'll actually go to land bank tonight, or to, not land bank, to landmarks tonight, planning commission next week, and to you all at the end of the month. Commissioner McKiernan and Strawberry Hill have requested some rezoning in the 5th and 6th Street corridors that we're working on, getting legal descriptions written for those. An amendment to the food truck ordinance that would allow that to be done administratively. Obviously, you all are aware of issues we've had with some of the dollar stores The mayor's requested an ordinance amendment to deal with those. We've had issues and questions related to social services in the downtown area and how those impact the availability of our police force and how we provide services to our community, and many other issues. There are some amendments that are required related to the recent animal code amendments that we'll have to process through the zoning, planning and zoning process. And then there's some issues related to vending machines at commercial properties we need to address. Under full project funding needed, and these are some of the bigger ticket items. I know Commissioner Walker has mentioned before, and other commissioners have mentioned a citywide zoning code amendment, a sign code amendment. If you do those two together, you probably save a little bit of money there, but those are very expensive. Talked about a northeast area plan. We addressed the northeast area and much of the urban core in the citywide master plan by saying we needed more specific planning in those areas, but we needed good urban redevelopment policies to address those. And the plan contains some of those policies, but I will say this for the next three items: northeast area, the Armourdale area, and the Central Avenue area all need more specific planning. And the only one that really hasn't had the community come to me is the Armourdale area. And the reason I put that on the list is that there continue to be industrial versus residential conflicts on the periphery of the residential areas in Armourdale. And we need a good way to address that versus just as soon as the house gets torn down, the industrial user to the south or the north buys it and then waits for the next one to get torn down. And we have, if we want to maintain that community over time, we need a good plan for it. Otherwise, there won't be a residential community there in the next century. It'll just get eaten up as housing goes away. We have more work to do with Healthy Communities Wyandotte related to food planning. Obviously, we have a lot of food issues and food desert issues in the community, and the infrastructure action team. They've done a lot of work as to prioritization of different activities. And when Healthy Communities Wyandotte started out, Mayor Reardon wanted that to be a very quick process and get some things going. And it did that, and it succeeded in that. But as we move forward over time, we've discovered that some of those things probably need to be memorialized in the master plan so that we can help implement those through the planning and zoning process. The last item under this is additional innovation in electronic plan review, online submission, and payment. We made a big step this year in being able to do all of our reviews electronically. We've got a couple more steps in that process to really make it sing, so to speak, and that one is to be able to submit those plans online. And one of the issues with that is that we could have them submitted online now, but they would be in an open portal area where anybody could copy those plans out of that. And out of respect to our architects and engineers we work with, we know that those products have value to them. We don't want them to be able to just be copied in and out of there. So we need to work through that process, and then we need to be able to submit electronic payment along with the online application with that. And Greg Talkins here as well this evening, and he and I are working on that particular piece of that, but there is a cost to that. If you put that item along with the ability to check your zoning and figure out where your business could be located and where the zoning was available and the properties were available in Kansas City, Kansas, if you put those two items together, I don't know of anyone else in the nation that would be as online friendly to development and business development as we would be here in Kansas City, Kansas. And that's really our goal with that. The next two items are personnel related. There's a lot of planning to do on this, and we have myself and two other planners in the department, and we are busy. I'm not making that up. In the last 2 or 3 years, we've done about $2.5 billion worth of business in the community. There's nobody else in the nation that I know of that could say that with 3 planners. We need some more staff to be able to accomplish these things for the community. And I would say that the place to do that would be in a long-range planner position. Many years ago when I worked in the City of Independence, I managed the long-range planning department. There were 5 people in a community of a similar size just doing long-range planning. Now, one of them was a GIS person, but we had a lot of people working on making sure that we could accommodate the types of requests that we've seen here. And then finally, I believe that it's important as we move forward to do high-quality neighborhood planning that my staff should be LEED neighborhood development certified. And so I would propose that as part of this year's goals for my staff that we would go through the LEED process. And there's 2 steps to that. There's an initial step that everyone has to go through to get the LEED credential, and then do the neighborhood development on top of that. And so that's the list. And basically what I'm asking for tonight, I know that this is probably not something you're going to do tonight, but as we move through the budget process and the amendment to the 2015 process in the summer and the 2016 budget, these are things that if we want to get them done, we need to address, not just in conversations between commissioners and myself, or NBR and myself, but we really need to, I need your input into how to prioritize those, and need your help to fund those in many cases. So I'd be happy to stand for questions, and this may not be a complete list. If you have others, I'm happy to add them, or if folks in the community or have others they'd like to add, I'm happy to add those to the list. But this is, I keep a pretty detailed list of what folks have talked to me about. This doesn't include necessarily all the lists that I have, like the major zoning amendment to the zoning code would take care of 3 or 4 pages of items I have with our current zoning code that I think ought to be updated, that we just haven't had time to go through the process with. So with that, I'll stand for questions.
Since I'm the substitute tonight and will not address this again until it probably comes to full commission, I have, since I took office, been urging the creation or the follow-through from Mayor Reardon's term of an industrial, for lack of a better name, an industrial task force. Now, in some of these proposed planning projects, perhaps the Armourdale plan, there is some aspect of that that may touch upon this, but it doesn't, as you know, when you cross the river into Riverside and view what's going on there, we're losing the ability to compete at certain levels of manufacturing. Now, I don't know that that's necessarily smokestack, but certainly the M2, M3, or M1, and I get them backwards as to which is the heaviest.
M3.
M3. M1 and M2, the buildings that we're offering are either older buildings that have to be retrofitted, or they are buildings that we have to build from the ground up as needed. We do not have a new industrial park. We have Fairfax, still viable, still has a future, but we are not making any plans for the future. To me, that needs to be on this list of potential priorities to be decided upon. Where, lots of opportunities depending on what money could be found to be available. But to do nothing and not have it as part of a planning process, we're just surrendering these businesses to the surrounding communities, and we need, my opinion is it needs to be on the list, and we need to urge the mayor's office to move forward on this in some concrete manner.
So if I were to put that on my list, I'd put a large-scale new industrial park facility location and planning. Is that accurate?
That would probably cover it. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll say that it was quite a relief to hear you didn't expect us to do this tonight. That was my biggest concern. And I didn't bring a pillow, so. But I do have just a couple of questions for clarification on some of these. Let me start off with the easiest one. I was happy to see this Northeast area plan. One of the questions I had about this, as well as some of the other costs under the column, UG costs over 3 years. Are those amounts expected to be borne internally? Is this the cost for our employees to participate in these projects? Or do you anticipate, for instance, with the Northeast Area Plan, for example, $120,000, that is a cost that will be borne by us to have someone do that plan externally?
That would be a consultant cost. I mean, the one staff member would be the staff necessary to basically facilitate, organize, and accomplish these with consultants over that time period. If you want these done in-house, you're talking 5 or 6 people and not one. I mean, and it would be, and these are estimates, they might fluctuate from that, but I thought the Northeast area would probably have enough extra community involvement issues that we would have extra meetings, and it would be a little bit more expensive than the other ones as far as what it would take to get that done and make sure that we did it correctly and had enough public involvement that the community felt like they could support the plan.
Okay. So under that heading, though, not only for that project, but for all of these, this is money that the UG would pay externally?
Correct.
Okay, regardless of the project?
Correct.
Okay.
Except on the staff. The staff is an internal, under the planner position, that's a 3-year cost. I assume $75,000 salary and benefits for someone that would have the experience and be able to facilitate those. And so that is our staff to help facilitate those. But where you see the total cost, that's the cost of the project. Whether or not I think we would, there are grant funds on the horizon. There might be for some more of these, but I can't predict that. And then we can't do this all in 1 year. I thought we could accomplish all these things over 3 years, and then, so some of that is over a 3-year total, especially when you get down to the bottom, what we would spend over 3 years, less the grant funding. But, you're at about $1.5 million over 3 years, about $500,000 a year to accomplish this list.
Okay. As I heard you explain number 3 here, the internet for sale property, I would think that the items that are listed at positions 13, 14, and 15 here, the Northeast Plan, Armadale Central Avenue Plan, would dovetail in nicely to have those done at the same time or soon thereafter, based on the fact that if this internet for sale property is to identify property available throughout the city, it seems to me that it would make sense to have these plans so we know what would fit well. I know that's a particular concern in the Northeast area. With regard to the citywide zoning code, complete revision of the city zoning code, what are we talking about here?
Well, the substance of this code was written probably in 1971 to 4, based on other codes that look exactly like that all over the country that were written in that same time frame. Our list of uses are outdated. The way we address some of those uses within the code is outdated. It's not easy to use, and so there are ways to make the code easier to use, better definitions, more graphically illustrated, current up-to-date uses for what we see now, and what the uses are available to folks now that we don't really address in the uses. I mean, we don't have, for instance, and I don't know that this is a particular example, but title loans. In 1971, we didn't have title loan companies. We do now, and we don't really address those. We've taken an interim step to address those, but there are many other uses that don't draw as much attention that need that same type of work to help make sure they fit in the community well.
Thank you. I think those were all the specific questions.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments for Rob? So what I've heard you say here is that you would like all of the commissioners, not just the ones on this committee, to look over this list and to give you feedback relative to whether or not the list is thorough. It includes all the projects that they believe should be on this list.
Correct.
And then also to give you feedback on priorities as they see it from this list and any items that might be added, especially as those priorities relate to funding through the budgets for the next 3 years.
Correct.
Is that an email that you could write
Yes.
to the commission and just say, Neighborhood and Community Development Standing Committee requests that everyone please look at this list with the following aims in mind: review for thoroughness and review for prioritization and for potential funding in the next 3 budgets. I really appreciate having this list put together because it is a nice tool to begin to wrap your brain around the entirety of the larger scale planning projects that we could and should undertake in the next 3 years.
And, you know, there's one that I didn't put on the list, and that's a major street plan update, and that will probably come from the county engineer, Mr. Heatherman, because he, you know, we need to make sure that we have a good street plan. There are state laws related to that, and we have 3 or 4 documents that make that up. And so there'll be some other, you know, this isn't the only planning related thing, but there'll be some engineering planning that'll go into this in different ways as well. But I thought I would reserve that for him on his list.
You know, I'm looking at some of these and, you know, 4 through 10, where you have $1,000, I'm assuming that $1,000 is just sort of a rough ballpark of staff cost.
In publication, staff, and it's really just publication. I don't know how much the legal descriptions will take and things for that, but.
Each of those, in my opinion, could be addressed far in advance of the citywide zoning complete revision, which you're optimistic to believe that that's going to be done in 16 to 20 months with that price tag. My opinion, okay, just mine. And while you know, I don't want to necessarily put it all off on legal, there's plenty of examples out in the ordinance service that address each of these for exemplars of how other cities have advanced them. Now, I've asked legal for an opinion or for an ordinance. I'm actually, I think, going to get a memo on this vending machine one, which has some currency in it, which I don't want to wait 4 months for.
Well, we are
So,
working on those, yes.
and I'm saying this as much to Patrick as to you,
Mhm.
that I'm expecting something in the next couple of weeks that identifies how this might be addressed, so we can choose a format for that ordinance and address that without any undue, not that it is the number one priority, it's obviously not, but these small marginal incremental things that we can change, we need to address those now and worry about assimilating them into a comprehensive zoning ordinance 2 to 3 years down the road.
I don't disagree with that, Commissioner. Part of the issue that I have is when I have requests from 4 commissioners for items to be done and they're important to that commissioner, for me to prioritize them, it becomes a difficult task sometimes. And I don't want to upset any of you individually because I didn't put you at the top, but we are working on these, and as we have staff time, we are addressing them. And, you know, I say 3 to 4 months, and that's, you know, we can address those. I know Patrick was working on, I learned more about that particular issue after this list was put out, but we are working those, and those will be processed as we can. But, you know, it does take some time, and it takes staff availability, and, you know, you're aware of those things, so.
You just have to pick and choose which commissioner you think is more important?
No, sir. I won't do that.
Thank you, thank you.
If you could go ahead and just send a reminder note out to the entire commission to review this list and get thoroughness and priorities back to you, and it really has to be fairly timely since we're going to start our formal budget process about a month from now. Yes, ma'am.
So I have just one question, Rob.
Mm-hmm.
I think this could also be helpful to the other commissioners. I'll just tell you, I have a particular interest in seeing the vending machine section of our code rewritten. And that costs $1,000. So this is just an honest question. If I'm able to come up with $1,000, can you take care of that
Well-
fairly quickly?
Those are publication fees, and I'll do those probably out of my budget. I noted at the bottom, I have about $30,000 annually I can appropriate within my budget to do some of these things, and those things will get covered under that. I mean, they'll be, so over the 3 years, I'll have $90,000 that I can do some of those things. And that's what I intend to do with those. And like I said, we've already started, I didn't realize at the time that we'd already started working on the vending machine ordinance. It should have a star by it, but this went out before I knew that that was going on. So we are working on those, and we're working on, I've got somebody that's gonna start doing research on it's already started research on the food truck a little bit, the dollar stores. I mean, some of that is ongoing, but I didn't want to leave them off the list because I thought you would, ask questions about those particular things too. But yes, those things, all of those things I could probably get done in the next year and wipe those off the list. But I would imagine that at any one time, there will be 5 to 10 items on that list that we're moving through the system, as we can. And they're not the large scale of some of the other items, but I want you to be aware that we are working on those and that they're on our list.
Okay, so just a suggestion, if you think this would work at all, is that some of our neighborhood groups have some pretty decent capacity. And so if in the future, maybe if you thought it would be helpful to us, because I know you don't have a big staff.
Mm-hmm.
You and I, we've talked about this before. If it would be helpful to put out to do that, it's going to cost this amount of money. Some neighborhood groups might opt to find somebody to do that work and pay for it.
Mhm.
And if that's an option, maybe that you roll it out there as an option for people. Something that you would find acceptable, or somebody that you could work with to get that done. Does that make sense?
Sure. So kind of like what we're doing with KU and the Rosedale plan. I mean,
Yeah.
we knew we needed to do that, and we've identified funders, and we're working through that process, and we'll hire a consultant. And we are, with doing that in the K-32 plan this year, we're going to be busy. I mean, that's why, I don't think I can take on any other great big projects this year with those two things going on, unless development just goes to nothing, which I don't anticipate that either.
Mr. Criswell?
Yeah, Rob, I just had a question on item 13, the Northeast Area Plan. For starting a second year now, the Federal Reserve, the e-commerce project has been working with the grassroots set of stakeholders in Northeast. And it sounds like from the meetings I've attended, this planning that they're doing with the Federal Reserve dovetails very well into this need for an area plan. And I'm just wondering if it's valuable to have a conversation with the folks at the Federal Reserve about how we can weave both of these into one plan, because we're going down very similar tracks.
No, I'd be happy to do that.
Okay. I'll get you to contact people. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
With regard to what Deputy Criswell just mentioned, I forgot to ask this question. When we're talking about the Northeast area, what districts or what are the boundaries that are being envisioned in that? Because I know the last information I had about the project the Deputy Criswell was talking about was confined only to zip code 66101. I would want to see a development plan that's much broader than that. So when we're talking about the Northeast plan, that'll be very important to talk about the boundaries and what would be
And I haven't set any boundaries on this, but if I had to tell you what I envisioned, probably Washington Boulevard to the river to 635. I mean, that would be kind of what I would envision as the Northeast area. You might cut that different ways, but for that amount of money, I think we could do that large of an area if you thought it could all be accomplished effectively in one fell swoop. Most of that, I think, is probably your district, or a lot of it is, so, I mean, that would be.
A lot of that's for, too.
Right.
So, okay.
So that's, there's a lot of detail left to do in these, but I would envision a large area, not a small area.
Any other questions or comments? Mr. Richardson, thank you very much for bringing this forward.
Thank you all.
We will provide additional input to you prior to budget time.
Thank you.
That brings us to item number 2 on our agenda tonight, which is an ordinance relating to the creation of a code enforcement administrative fine process. And I believe that'll be Wayne Wilson, Colin Welsh, and Greg Talkin.
And I'll start this tonight. Happy New Year.
Thank you.
Happy New Year.
My name's Colin Welsh. I'm with the legal department, and we're here to invite discussion on the administrative codes enforcement idea. A lot of different people have been, or a lot of entities have been working on this. The NRC administration, the administrator's office in general. My understanding is that a few commissioners have been working on this and have endorsed the idea. The Abandoned Housing Task Force has been looking at this, and also Judge Nichols Brakovich has been working on it. So I wanted to recognize all of them as well. Since this seems to be kind of a confluence, I'll keep it brief here. But basically, the framework that we're proposing in it, a party responsible for a property with a violation upon it can be issued a citation with a monetary civil penalty. One is expected to pay this penalty, or if they wish to contest it, they can request an administrative hearing. They would be going to an administrative hearing officer. This would free up code enforcement time as well as judicial resources, because a lot of this would be taking place in front of the administrative hearing officer as opposed to in court. If the final penalty is not paid, then the lien can be attached to the real property. This lien could then be foreclosed in a manner similar to a defaulted mortgage, or it could be rolled into the tax assessment. In any case, the property is not going to, the idea is that we're trying to prevent the property being conveyed with a clean title if we still have issues there, or if we've had some in the past. There is an ordinance before you. It's not perfect. First manner in which it's not perfect is that there are some typos. It was submitted under the fog of the flu. None of these corrections are going to affect the substance of it. And should you forward this to the full commission, those will be corrected. But again, those will not affect the substance of it. Wayne has a few packets, and in fact, that packet does include my corrections of those typos, and we'll get a properly edited version to you. The other way in which this is not absolutely perfect is that there is no other Kansas local government that is currently doing this. So we are in home rule territory. There is no state statute directly on point here, but due to the breadth of our police powers, I think we're on firm legal footing. That's all I have as an introduction, and if I'll entertain questions, all of us will.
Any questions, any discussion for Mr. Welsh or anyone else who's here? So my understanding of this is that the reasons for doing this are to decrease the burden on the court. Is that correct?
That's one, yeah.
So administratively handle some of the items that right now go before a judge, freeing up the judge's time to devote to other matters.
Right, and it also, our code officers are in court every Wednesday morning for a duration of 2 to 3 hours. They also will have their time
So it would
saved.
free up code officers as well in terms of administrative time spent in court would be reduced. Do we believe that it might lead to the faster resolution or a greater resolution of outstanding violations?
Yes, and I should have broached that, but that's our hope as well. Of course, with the threat of compounding these citations, we're hoping that that'll put a fire under individuals.
Who will be serving as, and not by name, because I doubt that we're done that far, but who's the administrative
That hasn't been determined. The ordinance that I have is that the county administrator would elect somebody, choose somebody.
Will this person be from outside the organization?
In most of the examples, Mr. Talkin has looked at a lot of examples, and in most of those, it has been somebody from outside.
Well, it seems to me that it needs to be somebody independent of, impartial, balanced, fair, all the words that you would apply, having the same qualities of decision-making as a judicial officer. I would not be favorable towards any internal staff, certainly no one from code enforcement or in that department, and it would seem to me that this would be a person that would have to be answerable or served by contract with the administrator's office. And that definition of this officer's duties is yet to be defined.
Yes, and I apologize. I've kind of covered my direct territory, but the other thing is that this is a big mechanism, and we have a lot of items that need to be ironed out, but we're getting to the point that we're going to start expending funds, exploring it, and trying to get the rubber to meet the road at this point. So we're bringing it to you to make sure that we've got the thumbs up to keep going, but there are a number of issues that we need to iron out. We're hoping to come online September. Right now, that's what we've been talking about, but there are database issues, the handling of funds, et cetera. And that one is a big one, and I appreciate your input.
I like the concept, okay? The appeal of an administrative decision, have you researched that?
The appeal? Well, yes, as it stands now, a lot of this area, this territory is under the Urban Renewal Act, and in there, you can appeal it to district court. I don't specifically have that pinpointed in the ordinance, but of course, like a writ of mandamus or an injunction request, that would always be
Well, the point is that whatever you decide to do, the appeal, in my opinion, should go to the district court. It should not go through municipal court, because you're only gonna compound the problem. They're just gonna carry it through every step.
And I think I proposed that to somebody, and they
So,
quickly redirected me.
it
so.
seems to me there is a statute, and maybe it is only for urban renewal, but I thought it was any agency decision by a local government can be appealed to the district court for review. It is not a trial de novo, it is a review to see if there's any basis in law or fact for the decision. So I'd take a look at that and see if that is still the case. But I don't think this is going to work if we appeal it through municipal court. So it has to go to district court. They're going to have to file a case over there.
I agree, thank you.
Thank you. Happy New Year.
Happy to meet you, thank you.
As Commissioner Walker just stated, I conceptually am not opposed to this. The devil's in the details of this, so I have some specific questions, if you'll bear with me. In Section 1, we're talking about imposing an administrative fine on a person who has violated any provision of the code ordinances. So how will this work that a person has been determined that they've violated an ordinance? Is that different than the process being used now? Code enforcement officer goes out and makes a determination, or how does that work?
It would be very similar. The investigatory part would be, as far as I can think, completely the same.
For the most, excuse me, it would be pretty much the same as Colin stated. Ultimately, when we're in front of the municipal court judge, part of the legitimacy of that case is also determined, which that role would kind of go to the hearing officer. That would be part of the hearing officer's role too, if the individual's trying to state that that's not a code enforcement violation. And ultimately, district court, if it's appealed further, could be part of the decision that they make.
So, okay, again, I'm trying to to understand step by step how this is gonna work. Code enforcement comes out, a citation is written, and then what? Notice is given of the particular amount for a fine, and then the person can either go with that, pay the fine, remediate whatever the problem is, or they can challenge that there's been a violation.
Right now, the way that we have it written is that, as we have with our code violations going to municipal court, there is a warning notice that's given prior to the citation. And typically on the judicial side of it, we're getting, I think it was 85 or not, I don't remember the percent. 80 to 85% compliance with that first letter. So we still have that provision in this scheme as well. So they'd be given an opportunity to correct it before actually receiving the citation. Once they receive the citation, then, in our opinion, they need to pay the civil penalty unless the administrative hearing officer deems otherwise.
Okay.
Did that?
Yeah, okay, is that gonna, all right. The notice, when we're still, I guess we're still in section 1, subheading notice of violation, the public officer shall provide notice in a reasonable time. Will the time given to correct the violation vary based on the type of violation alleged?
Yes, and this will be up to the discretion of the individual codes officer to determine when that needs to be done.
And what about the amount of the fines? Will that vary based on the type of fine, or just whether it's a first violation, second violation, or third violation?
We just have it a first, second, and beyond right now. But if you have a better idea, then please bring it forward.
No, I was just asking for clarification, so it doesn't matter what the fine is. If it's the first violation, it's $100. If it's, okay. Okay. All right, sticking with the money trail in section 4, if a citizen wants to contest the administrative citation, there's a process that includes depositing with the public officer $25 amount for the review.
Right.
Why are we requiring a payment?
Just to help defray our expenses. I mean, that's going to take time. We're also going to have to pay the hearing officer.
If I can come in here, I think the key is we want to make sure that the people appealing aren't just appealing it for the heck of it. We want them to have a firm belief that they are correct in their appeal, and if they do win their appeal, those dollars go back to them. We just don't want everybody appealing just for the sake of appealing. So as we looked at other cities that have done this, which are primarily on the east and west coast, they all have an appeal fee in their ordinance.
Okay.
And it's similar to any of our other appeals that we have too, whether it be in planning or Board of Building and Fire Code appeals. They have fees too, although they're more significant than this. Those are 100 or 150. We set on the 25 because we know that this is a different type of case. Some people are going to probably have problems paying that. And I believe there are provisions in this ordinance that if they have a hardship, we will have a way for them to fill out a form and work on that.
And you hit the nail on the head. The concern that I had when I saw this, there may be people who indeed feel they have a legitimate issue before the court, but the $25 deposit may pose an additional hardship on them. Now, you're saying if they prevail, though, at the hearing, they would receive the $25 back?
Yes.
Is that stated here in the ordinance?
I believe so.
I think we discussed that at some point. It was decided that that was going to be broached later, but I think I'm not seeing it right now, but
Okay.
I think if you want it, we should be putting that in.
If that's going to be what happens, I would appreciate seeing it. I think citizens who read that would like to know that too. which leads me to the next issue that Commissioner Walker's already raised, the review process. I would like to see here, where it says review officer on the second page, something more specific in terms of who the county commissioner will designate. I think a competent person, a person who serves as a review officer is just too broad. I was wondering, would it come from code enforcement or legal? And again, I thought that was too close. As Commissioner Walker's already made mention of. Whoever it is, I think that needs to be identified more specifically here.
Do you mean qualifications need to be more specifically identified, or?
Well, at least more specifically, who or the universe that this review officer is going to come from. I don't know who it's going to be. I agree with Commissioner Walker that internally would be too close, I think. But who it is, I think we need to, whoever you decide it's going to be, I think it needs to be articulated more specifically here than just what's there. And also with the appeal procedure, I think it's important for citizens to know what the appeal procedure is, what venue they would be before, and I think that needs to be written into the ordinance. I think that's most important. Thank you.
Thank you.
I had a couple of things additionally. On the second page of the ordinance, there are 3 different references to a time frame for response. One specifies, 2 of the 3 specify working day. One specifies working day, one specifies business day, and one just specifies day. And so I'd like to see us be consistent in whether it's a business day or a calendar day, and be consistent in how we reference that throughout. Then another question that I had was, we talk about budget impact on the last page here, and it also talks about, let's see, somewhere here I was reading about that there would be the potential for these fines to be directed into a fund that could be used then to help support rectification of code violations for those people who are financially otherwise not able to do it. And I just wanted to make sure that before we would create such a fund, as great as that would be, that we would use revenues from this program to offset the costs of this program and not generate any new cost, or at least think about how do we cover the costs from the program to reduce the annual budget impact of this program.
So would you be suggesting then that we get it rolling first and then kind of see where we are as far as income, outcome, and then determining if we have some money to set aside?
I certainly think that that would be a great approach to take, because to set aside, again, a fund to help, as great as that would be, could end up doubling the impact or increasing the budget impact of this over the long haul. So I'd like us just to look at that. Any other comments or questions? Yes, ma'am.
I just have a comment. First of all, Commissioner McKiernan and I agree wholeheartedly with the last part of your comment. I think we should cover our costs before we're setting up programs. Because we have to pay ourselves to do the work we do. So I think that would be great if we could do that. And then I just want to say thanks very much to Judge Nichols. She did a fantastic job, and it's the first time in the 8 years I've been here that I've had a judge get this involved and roll up their sleeves and come up with some good ideas. And kudos to Codes for bringing this forward. You know, it's a big issue with me. It's very important, and anything that makes that department more effective and more efficient is just fantastic with me. So I think everybody else covered the details. I just wanted to tell you all, great job.
Yes, sir.
One of the other advantages to this program is we have a lot of LLCs and out-of-state property owners that we're not able to punish for not adhering to the codes of our city. Through this process, we can still administer a fine to those individuals, even though we cannot get them into municipal court. You know, if we issue a bench warrant to an out-of-state owner, they're not going to drive here just to pay a fine, and nothing ever happens with that. They either correct their problem or don't, and if they don't, we're left stuck with that situation. Through this means we can imply a fine against them that they have to pay, and if they fail to then correct the situation, it can be done again, and that's where the fine schedule elevates. So after a period of time, we can make a significant impression on their wallet to correct the violations. Also, I would like to, we just did a very preliminary guesstimate on the billing that would go out based on the number of cases that we did in 2013 and also as up through December 18th of 2014. Based on the 15% problematic individuals that we have to deal with on a regular basis, the 5% that are repeat offenders, and the 2% of the people that just don't care one way or the other, they're going to do what they want to do. And based on those figures, the amount of billing that would possibly go out for 2013 would have been $455,000, and for 2014 would have been $441,000. The actual number of people that would pay those amounts, I'm sure would be significantly lower than that. But as far as funding the program, we're hoping that we can, by individuals paying these fines, we can actually get some funding back towards this program to make it work more effectively.
Very good. Mr. Criswell?
Well, Wayne, I just had a question. Can we require companies that are listed as LLCs to have a registered agent that we can then go after because they represent that LLC? Is that legal, Colin? Can we do that?
I think we're getting back into the property registration idea, or abandoned property registration idea,
Okay.
which is something that we've kicked around quite a bit. My last impression was that we didn't want to go forward with that. One of the items before was how much are we going to charge, and there were a lot of challenges being made to the expense if they were federally backed. Anyway, I have thought about that in drafting this, that might be a good complement, but it would be my advice that we wouldn't want to attach much of a fee, if any, to that registration. So I guess I'd give that back to the commission to decide if they want to go forward with
Not
that.
the registration, but if we are going to assess a penalty to the LLC and we can't contact them, can we assess that a penalty to their local representative, which is a body?
No, we would have to assess it to the LLC, but
Okay.
again, they're not gonna, I mean, we're gonna end up putting it on the property, hopefully, or, I mean, that's the more effective.
We require in alcoholic beverage establishment, liquor establishments, a local, that is Wyandotte County resident, to be either the resident agent, which is often a local attorney, or an individual who lives here, which you often find where the actual owner in interest, the equitable owner, is somewhere else. Corporations that own property that are authorized to do business in the state of Kansas have to have a registered agent in Topeka for the acceptance of service of all legal process. So I don't know if that extends to LLCs or not. I mean, I'm not sure of, but wherever that is available, we should take advantage of it, because service on the registered agents is service on the company, which will eventually roll those fines into tax levies against the property, which, while we may not get it immediately, if they ever abandon or sell the property, we will recover that. So that should be looked into as a possibility.
And that's one of the other things to iron out. How far are we gonna look, into the state resources as far as tracking down who has an interest in the property, but.
And along the lines of Commissioner Townsend, I'm not opposed where you have someone of economic need having time to paint the house or, you know, put on a new roof or, you know, some other alternative. The thing that gets me is you can get away with cutting your grass about 3 times a year if you fight through with code enforcement. To me, once they've had notice of the violation, you know, one size does not fit all. Not all code violations are equal. You know, having somebody with their yard constantly overgrown is far more irritating than a roof that, yeah, it needs to be fixed, but it's not something that's is visible or is noticeable. So I don't want to see a situation like we've got now where you give them notice, they go to court, they appeal, and finally at some point they correct it by cutting the grass and, you know, walk away. People need to cut their grass, and nobody's too poor to cut their grass once a month. So it's a pet peeve of mine, and I'm sure some of the other commissioners, that we get more complaints about uncut grass, and it includes us too. I mean, city-owned property, I realize that. If you have to live next to somebody that doesn't take care of their yard, like I did for 14 years, then it's a constant fight.
Commissioner, if I can comment on that. Similar to what we did on the code violations in the current process, that helps cut some of the time off, even though I understand we don't have the lawnmowers and getting people to cut their grass sometimes is in their control, other than the hammer we're trying to bring down on them. But in this process, we also did put for all the violations that if they've been served a notice in the last 24 months, then their notice is giving. We go straight to an administrative citation, no NOV or notice of violation will be sent again on that type of code violation. The other thing I'd like to mention real quick, this is kind of a major process change for us. And because of that, our plan would be to roll it out on a couple different types of violations to get the notices perfected, get the process perfected before we start expanding this. Because I will tell you, if this works as we believe it will, we believe we can expand that not only to all the code enforcement process, but we believe it'll be a benefit to the rental licensing program as well as our building inspection program, where we're dealing with violators, and also our zoning enforcement issues too. But we want to make sure we get this perfected in 1 or 2 violations first, types, and then start rolling it out, what we've learned, into all types of violations.
And what types do you anticipate starting with?
Our initial thought is, right now, we have the abatement programs, and it's a perfect fit for those, because if you guys recall, when you used to approve the specials on the grass cutting, a lot of the comments I received from commissioners, we should be charging them more. We were only able to charge the cost. So not only on the abatement process will we be charging a cost, we'll be charging a fine or this administrative citation cost on top of that. Not only that, the notice procedure for that is almost similar or exact to what we're doing here. So we're going to be able to merge the wording of this process with our abatement process, which is our most, we believe that's a good fit. The other item that we believe that will be, the next step would be our structural type violations, the painting of the house, the outside window repairs, roofs, things along that line. Those are ones where we find a lot of out-of-state and corporation concerns, where sometimes we have problems holding somebody accountable. People tell us all the time, I'm out of town, go ahead and summons me to court, I'm not coming. Here we can say, that's fine, we'll go ahead and send you a fee notice. You don't pay it, we're going to place it on the property.
So the request for action that we have before us tonight is to approve the ordinance as submitted, and I would assume as now clarified and corrected as a function of our discussion.
Right, I don't think I heard anything tonight, or the recommendations from you all. Nothing seemed contentious. I think I can add everything if you just want to move it forward, and it would be available then for the full commission with the changes you proposed. Or we can bring it back next month to the standing committee again.
I, for one, would like to see it. before we roll it to the full commission. I think this is so important, and I know you're making every effort, especially with the stepped up compliance aspect that you just talked about. I would really like to see what I am moving forward, recommend move forward first.
So we have a motion.
Make it so, yes.
So there's a motion for the corrections and clarifications to be made in this ordinance proposal to be brought back to standing committee next month. Is there a second?
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Roll call Walters.
Aye.
Murgia.
Aye.
Townsend.
Aye.
Walker.
Aye.
McCarron.
Aye. Thank you so much. We'll look forward to continuing the discussion next month. Thank you. Brings us to item number 3 on our agenda tonight, and that is land bank applications as presented by Mr. Slaughter.
Move for approval? No, do you need to go through these, Chris, or can we just?
I can put them on the record if you need to, or,
No, I think, I mean, for me, all the detail is on here. I hate to do that to you, but, I mean, you lay it out fairly easy to understand, so I'd move for approval.
Second.
There's been a motion and a second to approve all of the land bank applications as presented in our agenda. Any further discussion? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Roll call Walters. Murgia.
Aye.
Townsend.
Aye.
Walker.
Aye.
McCarron.
Aye. Mr. Slaughter, thank you very much. That brings us to the end of the agenda for our Neighborhood and Community Development Standing Committee. We will take about 3 minutes here just to change over, to change seats, to get our additional committee member in, and then we will convene Economic Development and Finance in 3 minutes. Oh, what?
We have item number 1.
Oh, I'm sorry. Had more than 3 minutes passed, since we've said there would be 3 minutes intermission. So at this point, we'll go ahead and get settled, and we will call the next standing committee meeting. I'd like to welcome everyone to this meeting of the Economic Development and Finance Standing Committee. Public comment is welcome. Anyone who wishes to speak on any item on the standing committee agenda may do so when that item is up for discussion. If you wish to make a comment, you would be recognized by myself, and then make your comment from the podium that's in the middle of the meeting room. You'll have 5 minutes to make your comments, and for accurate recording purposes, we ask that all present please speak as directly as possible into a microphone. Roll call, please.
Roll call. Alvey.
Here.
Walters.
Here.
Magia.
Here.
Townsend.
Here.
Walker.
Here.
McCarron.
Here. The first item of business is approval of our standing committee minutes from our meeting of November 3rd, 2014.
Move for approval.
Second.
There's been a motion and a second to approve those minutes as submitted. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say no. Those minutes are approved as submitted. That takes us to our committee agenda. Item number 1 on our committee agenda tonight is a request for authorization for the fire department to purchase 18 new defibrillators.
Good evening, Commissioners. Fire Department wishes to enter into a 5-year lease purchase agreement to purchase 18 new defibrillators from Zoll Medical Corporation. They're wishing to enter into a 5-year lease agreement. This is not part of our current master lease agreement, so it's being brought forward here because it's committing future CMIP budget. The budget was amended this past summer, so no budget revision would be required in 2015 or throughout the lease term, but it was not identified as a lease finance in the CMIP budget. Legal is working on the contract, and it should be completed by the full commission meeting.
Move approval.
Second.
There's been a motion and a second to approve the request as submitted. Is there any further discussion on this item? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Roll call. Alvey.
Aye.
Walters.
Aye.
Magia.
Aye.
Townsend.
Aye.
Walker.
Aye.
McCarron.
Aye. Thank you, Ms. Johnsher. Thank you, Chief. Appreciate it.
Here's hoping we won't need it.
Yeah, there you go. I like the way you're thinking.
that personal.
Okay. That brings us to item number 2, which is a request for a budget revision to replace the scoreboard at Community America Stadium, and submitted by Mr. Tobin, but also going to recognize Mr. Bach on this one as well.
Thank you, Commissioner. I just want to start with the financing note on this. I'm going to have Mr. Tobin and Mr. Stitt will go through and describe the project a little bit more. As you recall, we took acquisition of the stadium last year. Money was put into that account, which was to cover future capital cost. We did not set out initially in the 2015 budget the funding to go forward to replace the scoreboard, as we didn't have a full grasp of everything in there. Mr. Tobin will go through that and identify the need, but we found that it's a cost avoidance probably for us to go forward and do this now. It's a better cost use of our money. None of this funding comes from the general fund. None of it could be attributed to any other use. It is all directed by the state that it had to go toward the purchase of the stadium or repair, maintenance, upgrades to the stadium. So this is all money that's setting separate of your general fund for operating purposes for any other operation. We're either using it on the stadium or we don't touch it. So that's where that money sits today, and with that, as we come forward, we think we're still managing the money, though. I mean, we're respectful of how we do it and what's the best way to do it, and that's where Mr. Tobin and Mr. Stitt have their presentation today.
Mr. Tobin?
Second.
There's been a motion and a second to approve the expense as submitted. Any further discussion? Mr. Tobin, there is further discussion.
Just one thing for clarification. We have all of the money we need for this, or is there some additional? I keep seeing the word additional here, and that's throwing me off.
Well, the additional is that we put in the budget about $250,000 this year. We anticipate this will cost somewhere in a range of $400,000 to $500,000. So we're going to utilize that money for this. So it's additional money that's budgeted. We have the money, it's in an account. I can't spend that money unless I submit it to you to build into a budget and say this is what we're using it for. So we didn't have that identified last year that we were going to buy the scoreboard. So now we're coming back and saying, rather than try to spend $100,000 to repair this scoreboard and keep it maybe operating through this year, we're better to go buy a new one now rather than wait another year and throw good money after bad.
What's the expectation for the life of the new scoreboard? It makes sense, as you say, if one's gonna be needed, not to spend $100,000 to repair, but what are we looking at in terms of the age of this new scoreboard?
The current scoreboard, Commissioner, if I might, it made it through 10 years in fairly good shape. But as you recognize at home, you know, with your own electronics, with your computers and with your televisions, the improvements and the upgrades move so fast that the companies that service these don't store the parts nor keep up with the maintenance of the older facilities. We're hoping to get 5 to 10 more years out of it. A lot of that would depend on the market more than anything else.
I will note that when we took acquisition, we knew the scoreboard was an up-and-coming thing. Our estimate at that time probably was that it would be around $800,000 to do a new scoreboard, so this is significantly below where we came in with that because we're able to use, you know, as Mr. Stitt went through it, all the existing infrastructure that's there and then come up with something that from a marketing standpoint will be far more advantageous for the stadium.
Yes, ma'am. Would you have a comment or question on this item? If you could come over to the podium and please state your name and
Good
address for
evening.
the record.
Yes, Crystal Watson, 8532 Spring Avenue, Kansas City, Kansas. Good evening. I have a question. Is it possible, or have we considered private funder to get naming rights and provide some of the funds for the sign? Particularly beverage. Whichever vendor you use, if it's Pepsi or Coca-Cola, while they may not fund all of it, they may fund a portion of it where that puts some more funds back into your budget. Just a thought.
No, and it actually fits with what how the stadium operates. The new sign that comes on play provides more marketing opportunities, so you don't necessarily sell someone to come in and buy the scoreboard for you. You buy the scoreboard and then you sell marketing rights to the scoreboard. The digital, similar to the discussion you all had a week or two ago on digital billboards, as you'll note, the existing scoreboard that we had there has a lot of static location on it. This will allow you to, our new scoreboard will be able to allow you to sell more advertising sponsors to come in either throughout the game or at different times or to different vendors for other kinds of events.
Okay, well, I just thought because the board itself, you could still do that as well. So I just wondered if you had that kind of conversation. That was it was actually
Thank you
not
so
a
much.
question so much, but a comment. Thank
Thank
you.
you so much.
Call for the question.
So there has been a motion and a second to approve the request as submitted. Roll call, please.
Roll call. Avi.
Aye.
Walters.
Aye.
Regia.
Aye.
Townsend.
Aye.
Walker.
Aye.
McCarron.
Aye. That has been approved. And I'd like to recognize Mr. Adam Ellert, owner of the T-Bones, who is here, and just say thank you for what you do, and we look forward to an even better fan experience this summer.
Thank you, Commissioner.
That brings us to item number 3 on our budget, which is a resolution supporting an application for tax credits. Mr. Brockman and Mr. Brockman.
Good evening, Commissioners.
Good evening.
Well, tonight we want to present Entrepreneurs Enterprises LLC. They submitted a LIHTC application, 40 units, 30 of those are LIHTC and 10 are market rate, as required by our new policy of 25%. This is Maximilian Howell that's representing Entrepreneurs Enterprise LLC. And so a little bit about the project. It's a 6.9 family development. It's 40 new duplex units, and it's at 7401 Armstrong Avenue. The thing about this project, it's really neat because it's going to enhance another LIHTC project that's already there. It's going to be a bookend to a project that's existed since 2003 called Westgate Apartments. And they have 48 units, 38 tax credits, and 10 market rate as well. So it's a very mixed type project. So in your documentation that was supplied, we have specific items that are related to the previous projects that they have completed, the management team, and the type of violations. So I'll turn it over to Maximilian, and he will present his project.
Charles, appreciate the introduction. I want to first thank everyone here for that opportunity to speak and present our development to you guys. A special thanks to a former principal of mine. Do you guys want to prepare the PowerPoint? Okay, thanks a lot. So this is just a high-level rendering of what the exterior of the proposed development will be. Charles, just to echo on what Charles just previously said, it will be 40 units, but these will also be permanent residential units, so they will be units that will convert into permanent financing and add to the additional property tax value of the area. High level, we're going to go over team qualifications, past projects, a little bit description of the project, and further detail. Architecture gives you some housing and pics. The site plan, which will give you high level perspective of what the area is, some area photos. And from a team qualifications perspective, we've got over 10 years of tax credit development on our team. Completed several developments across the country. They've been all listed there. We also have some local developments, as you can see, with the Kansas City project and also the Bonner Springs project. We were also able to get some support from Marcia Harrington, who actually sent in and spoke with Mr. Brockman today in regards to the high credibility and high reputation of our previous development that was in Bonner Springs. She also followed up with a letter. One thing to also note is that we don't have any foreclosure, default lawsuits, or code or policy violations with any of these developments across the country. Just a little bit description of the project. Charles mentioned most of this before. As we said, 40 new units. We'll also have a community building, but there'll also be some outdoor walking paths and some gardening areas. From a financial perspective, we're looking at the $4,945,000 in tax credits. There will be a $1.9 million permanent loan, and then also deferred developer fee of the $95K. Tax rate is at the 9%. The unit mix is listed below. We'll have 25% market rate. Site plan, as Charles also mentioned, it's at 74th and Armstrong. This area was really initially located and decided upon after several meetings with Charles's department, and really the extensive work that the city performed with the State Avenue corridor market analysis and market study. Basically, the end of the study and the findings of this study revealed that this 74th Street or the community college corridor was the most in need, or the item that would be most successful per that marketing to actually have a development that would catalyze and revitalize the area based off of all of the nodes that they studied on State Avenue. So if we get in, this is a site plan. We'll have 40 units or 40 total units, but there'll be 20 units on separate sides of the site plan area. Again, this is the other side of the unit, so they'll be separated on 2 different plots. The unit plans are very standard. We've got a lot of high-end development. We utilize universal design on the interior components to allow for an increased capability for, any kind of handicap residents or tenants that we may have. Also increases the standard design of the layout, but we have a 2-bedroom layout and a 3-bedroom layout. They also will have garages and some different amenities that we can discuss and we can provide later.
And shelter areas in the garage.
Yes. That's all the information that we have thus far on this project. We again wanted to echo that we've got our management company, and our company as well has been very successful in the area. We are from the area. We are a local development company that's based out of the Kansas City area. We're actually from the area, live in the area, and would like nothing more to actually complete a development in our backyard. It's one of our goals from a company perspective is to complete a development that is in the area that we grew up and that we travel in and that we work in and that we, spend money in. So it's just a goal of ours, and we look forward to the opportunity to really provide this development to the area. We really think that it can provide, just like the State Avenue corridor said, an opportunity to revitalize and gentrify the area.
Appreciate it. Thank you very much for the presentation. So the request for action that is before us is to approve and forward this application to full commission. Yes, ma'am.
So, great presentation, first of all, and I appreciate all the comments you made about being from here and caring about it. I especially am impressed with the fact that none of your current properties have had code violations. That's incredibly impressive, given the kind of housing that you're building. So I really appreciate that. Just so the commission is aware of, is that I've been working on some things in regard to the number of low-income housing units in Wyandotte County as a whole with our mayor's office. And so before anybody makes a decision, I would like for Charles, if you have at your disposal the map that you sent to me. Do you have access to that?
No, I don't, not right here.
Okay. I think that the map that Charles sent me might be something that this commission would like to see before making that decision, but since we don't, I'm looking for it on my stuff as well, and I can't find it.
What's this map up?
It's a map. What it's done is it's mapped every LIHTC, every housing authority, every Section 8 voucher. We requested it, if you remember, Commissioner Townsend, you and I both requested this information at a standing committee meeting where we redid the LIHTC policy here in Wyandotte County. And they just hadn't come back yet. I just got this a week and a half ago, so it just hasn't made it back here yet. But I just got it, and I was a little taken aback by the number of low-income units that we have in Wyandotte County. And not just from, I was even more surprised, a learning experience for myself, not just from 635 moving inward east, but out on 75th Street, 85th Street, the growing population of low-income housing. And the reality is that level of housing does affect our median income, and our median income in this county affects our ability to attract business. I'm not saying that to discourage this development. It's a different deal. I'm just saying that is a piece of information that this commission requested, and they haven't seen it yet. And if I had it, sorry, Charles, I just took it off my phone, or I could download it myself, but I don't have it. But that's up to them. It was just information I wanted you to know, and Charles is not late, I just got it.
I do recall requesting specifically the identification and location of LIHTC properties in District 1, because this was the meeting we discussed. That was the first opportunity I'd ever been engaged or had the opportunity to discuss that. So I'm not necessarily opposed to the LIHTC properties, but just for information purposes. So I did receive that information.
I do want to note, as you recall, we spent a fair amount of time going through the LIHTC process, the application that's submitted, the directive by the commission to follow is that we put that together, then we evaluate them and score them, and it's where they meet on the point scale, and then
you
that's
did a great
forwarded to you.
job,
So
yeah.
this is one that did comply with that,
Right.
and the requested action is to review and forward to the full commission.
Yeah, I was just saying, you did a great job, and your staff did a great job. I just feel like I know I'm the only one that has that map, and I feel like it's something that they should just see. Now, if they don't, I'm fine with that. It was just a little bit startling to me, how it seems to be spreading further and further west, and that there's no deconcentration really anywhere. It's just growing everywhere at a very fast rate. You're right. We had made some changes, and we all agreed on that, and I think they were great changes. But we did not have access to this information during that decision-making process. But I just wanted you all to know I wasn't carrying that burden alone.
And to talk about that, the LIHTC projects that were shown in Wyandotte County were the ones that were approved through the city. So we had those projects, and then we also had projects that were public housing projects, and we compared those and what the median income. The big map that GIS did for us was Section 8 vouchers, and those are pretty much all over Wyandotte County. So there was the separation of the two types of maps. So just
And
clarification.
not to, that's sort of accurate on the last part on Section 8. Section 8 vouchers are not all over Wyandotte County. I don't believe, I never remember the number. What district are you again, Jim? 7. It wasn't 7, you have some. It was the one next to you, so it must be District 5. District 5 has none. Not one Section 8 voucher, which is fine. I'm just saying they're not evenly spread throughout Wyandotte County. Just telling you.
Okay.
I had my 2 cents.
So I think we have a request that that information be circulated to all the commissioners in a timely manner. And we still have before us the request for action, which is to approve and move forward this application.
Yeah, and I believe the action, and I can stand to be corrected by legal if it's there, but once it meets the point scale that's set out, then it's there, it meets it, it's for your review, and then we move it forward to the full commission.
Well, and the other.
So unless there's something you see within it where it doesn't comply with the, this is one of those, it's always an awkward one because it's not really you don't vote pass fail where it's at. It's more of your review to look at it and say you agree that it meets the requirements that are there. I mean, that we've reviewed it adequately, I think is where we're at on this one. And we had a lot of discussion with that as we went through the process, but that's our adopted
So,
process.
am I taking from that that we really don't need to take any action here tonight other than to gather information, ask questions, clarify as necessary?
Yeah, and then, yeah, forward it on to the full
Do we
commission.
need to take action to forward? That is to take a vote to forward.
We always have in the past, whether it's a rule or not, it's
Okay.
what we've done.
I
And I
think
would
that's true.
just say, if there's something, I'm sure, I mean, after tonight, Charles can send that out. I know he has it. If not, I can send it to all of you when I get home. And if something arises between the time we review it and it gets to full commission, this isn't the end all
Okay.
tonight.
Right.
And we'll have a second bite at that apple at full commission.
Then I would make a motion that we approve and move forward this application to full commission?
Second.
There's been a motion and a second to do such. Any further discussion? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Roll call, Alby,
Aye.
Walters, Mergia,
Aye.
Townsend,
Aye.
Walker,
Aye.
McCarron.
Aye. Thank you very much for your presentation. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
That brings us to item number 4 on the committee agenda, which is another application for housing tax credits, again presented by Mr. Brockman.
Good evening again. This project is from Builders Development Corporation, and they are requesting support of utilization of the Section 42 tax credits as well. They are, the name of it is called West Village 55+ Senior Independent Resident Housing Development. And once again, your documentation shows the previous projects, the management team, and the types of, any types of violations that may be present in the projects that they have had. So at this time, this is Kelly Harvey,
That's fine.
and I'm gonna get this right, Marilyn Pina. Okay.
Thank you, Charles. Thank you, Commissioners. Thank you for allowing me to spend my 40th birthday with you tonight. I don't see my birthday cake anywhere, but that's okay. Anyway, but thank you for having us here to speak about this great project tonight. We're going to go through it relatively quick, knowing we're a little behind schedule, but the project we're proposing in front of you tonight, we're calling Village West Senior Living. The project, kind of a general overview, it's a 55 maintenance-free community located near Village West in Kansas City, Kansas. I think on our application I put it was around 89th and Ann, but it's actually south of 92nd Street in Ann. It's a kind of a bigger location, so I just kind of used the entrance for the actual final location since it doesn't really have an address at this point. The project will be restricted to households 55 and older. It's going to include 82 units, 10 of which will be 3-bedroom villas, and 72 will be duplex 2-bedroom units. We'll have a clubhouse on the site, 2,500 square feet. Some of the amenities we're proposing will be on-site management and maintenance, social programs, playground for the grandkids, Rosa Community Garden, sports court, barbecue pit with a shelter. And when we look at projects, I'm going to go over a real quick analysis of the demand, why we have been focused on this project for so long. We own and operate a project about a mile away called Pemberton Senior Living. It's an 80-unit senior living project that before we even started construction in 2010, we inherited the project through another developer and sat on it for a couple years during the recession, but finally got it developed. It's located at right across the street from the West Wyandotte County Library, if you know where that is, the new duplex development there. Before we started construction on that project, we had, I think, 250 people on a waiting list. Today, we have over 300, we did another survey and had over 300 elderly on our waiting list in May of 2014. 165 of those households are still on our waiting list. 125 of those households have fallen off just because they can't wait for the housing. And we did a further analysis of our waiting list. 79% of the wait list are Wyandotte County residents. 93% of those persons on the wait list based on their income would qualify for a low-income unit. And this is based on the fact that there's essentially no turnover at Pemberton, and there's very minimal product like this out in the western part of Wyandotte County. And that is just our waiting list. In addition to our waiting list, our market study has shown within a 5-mile radius there's an additional need for 1,000 of these types of units. So again, the demand side of the equation is very strong for this product. We've been looking for the right piece of dirt and came across this about 3 or 4 months ago. The price is right. The planning has already been through the city. I don't think we're changing anything other than the income restrictions from the previous plan. Again, here's a bigger map of where it's located. Pemberton's up here in the yellow box, and West Village is just down here with the yellow star. Here's kind of an overlay of the proposed plan that you see here, what it would look like south of the neighborhood that's existing there currently. And here's a site and development plan that basically shows the layout of the units, the duplexes.
as a buffer between the duplexes and the single-family residences. That's where we're laying out the villas as previously approved in the plan. The only change that we have in this plan from the previous is we got rid of some of the density and added a clubhouse up at the top in that box, as you'll see in this next slide. That includes all the amenities that we discussed and were in our proposal to Charles. There's some of the amenities. Here's essentially kind of the preliminary elevation floor plan. Top one is the duplex. The bottom's the villa. Essentially will be the duplex with an extra garage and an extra bedroom. The development team, Prairie Fire Development Group. It's a combination of Prairie Fire Development Group and Builders Development Corporation, who couldn't be here tonight. The executive director's out of town on business, but they're a statewide community housing development organization, and they'll come in as our nonprofit partner on the project as it's done before on some other projects. Our management company, I can't say that when we first started this project, Pemberton, we hired third-party management. We weren't very happy with them, so we ended up starting our own management company, and since then, we've had great reviews on our property. We've got control of the management. We have a lot of happy residents there. Here are some other projects we've done in the past and currently, Pemberton Senior Living, Prairie Point, McPherson, Kansas. I won't read them all, but those are some of the projects we're currently working on, all of which that are actually up now, 100% occupied with waiting lists. And here's some testimonials from folks living at Pemberton, and I have some handwritten and some also just form testimonials and surveys from people living there and also people on our waiting list begging us to build this product so they have a nice, safe place to live. With that, thank you. We have some folks here, I don't know when it would be appropriate for them to provide support or testimony, and
So once again, if we could have you just state your name and address for the record before you make your comments, we'd appreciate that.
Okay. I am Merle Bland. I live at 8311 Garfield Avenue, Kansas City, Kansas, and I am an executive director of Business West Incorporated. However, I am speaking tonight as an individual residential property and business owner. My wife and I have lived in Wyandotte County for nearly 51 years, and the last 41 years at our present address. Pemberton Place, which was developed by Kelly Harabi, a Prairie Fire Development, adjoins our subdivision, Huff's Lakeview Gardens. We are pleased to have the development next to our subdivision. Kelly and his associates turned a site that was an all but abandoned greenhouse and an aging rental home into something that is attractive, well-maintained for older adults at 82nd and Walker Avenue. Kelly's property management company does an excellent job in maintaining the development. I know this firsthand because I drive through Pemberton Place regularly. The very high occupancy rate at Pemberton Place confirms there is a definite market for this age-restricted housing. I would encourage the commissioners to recommend the full commission to approve this project that Kelly is approving tonight. And I have copies of my remarks that I'll hand out to the commissioners.
So based upon the research you've done, the wait list and the great demand for Pemberton and good results, you're really saying that these are just Wyandotte County folks who are trying to relocate within the county, stay close to home, stay close to family, looking for a place that provides maintenance, newer, much more energy efficient,
yep,
more sustainable.
Yeah, sure. Exactly. And Marilyn can speak up a little bit on, as well if she wants to, put her on the spot, but she handles all of our leasing and compliance work. But typically what we're seeing, as you might suspect, is folks that have been living in Wyandotte County for a while in their single-family home, ready to sell, we need something smaller, a little maintenance-free, that type of thing, and that's the main type of resident we're seeing move into our product. You know, the great amenities that are out there right now with transit, the library, I go work at the library a lot, that's a great library out there. The trails we have, just the amenities, is a very attractive place for these folks to come to. And it kind of breaks our heart when we see people come in and they say, I want a place to live, and you say, well, we're not going to have a unit probably ready for 2 years. And even if you get on the list, you're going to be 166. So, yeah, that's the type of main tenant. And we do see a fair share, like I said, about 20% of the people on the list are coming from out of the county, either out of state or people locating their parents or relatives closer to home that want a nice, quality, safe, affordable place to live.
We do have someone else here who'd like to make a comment. Ma'am, if you could state your name and address for the record.
Sure.
You'll have
Hi.
5 minutes.
Sharice Sedlock, 9263 Minnesota Avenue, which is actually right next door to the west in St. Pat's Village to this project. Tonight I bring you greetings and an endorsement from a longtime resident, businessman, economic development advocate, and founder of Business West, Joe Matarak. Joe couldn't be here tonight, but he felt like this development was so important that he wanted to be able to state that it was important to him, to his family, to Katie, his wife, to have a quality development like this that creates choices for seniors and for those of us who have chosen to stay in Wyandotte County and to have that continuation of housing. Personally, I'd like to say that I've moved back into my parents' home, my childhood home in St. Pat's Village, to extend their stay in their home. They're both polio survivors and the mobility issues, and partly because of lack of immediate choices. And so while I am loving that I'm able to help them extend the dream, I've seen that neighborhood. We had 58 children, at 24 houses, and it was a tight neighborhood, but I've seen my parents' neighbors and friends move away and move to Johnson County, north of the river, Kansas City, Missouri, to housing because there wasn't that choice here. I've had an opportunity to work with Kelly and also the Builders Development Corporation in the past, having sold over $62 million worth of land in Wyandotte County in my career here in commercial real estate. I would rank them as high up on my list of professionalism. So thank you for hearing me.
Thank you very much. Other public comment? If you could also state your name and address for the record, please.
David Simpson, 5406 State Line, Shawnee Mission, Kansas. Okay.
Yes, sir.
I control the corporation that owns the property. That this will be, it's 105 acres, of which this will be 15.11 acres. And I just wanted to emphasize that the remaining 90 acres that will be developed it's very important to me that the first project on this site, it'll be a quality project done by quality people who maintain their property and are bringing to the marketplace something that will enhance the remaining development of the property. And just wanted to emphasize for your consideration the fact that I've been around Wyandotte County for a long time. I have a senior housing project at 78th and Parallel. I've got residential stuff. My late father-in-law, Fred Ball, I was involved with many of the things that family was involved with out here in Wyandotte County, and I think I have a pretty solid feel for the western Wyandotte County development area. And one of the things that's irrefutable is there's a need for housing, and I think that this will actually lead to more market rate housing. I think it'll lead to other development in there. We're talking, it's potentially stimulating the interest in having assisted living built in there, but there'll be single family, there'll be apartments, there'll be townhomes, and this is the beginning of that, and all of those things provide a base for taxes in the future. And so I think this is really a catalyst for things that'll be very beneficial to the county, the community, and to the area in general. It has to start somewhere, and I think I found just the right sort of temperament, quality, and people to do the project. So that's my comment.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
I'm Glenn Darrow, 8900 Pawnee Lane, Old Leawood. We call it the Hood to all of our friends out south. I have been builders and developers representative, and I have also had the opportunity to contact most of the supporting list of all the businesses up and down State Avenue. I've also been a member of Business West, and I've been working in and around with these projects for about the last 10 years. We do come back and serve the community at all times. Basically our family roots go all the way back to Milburn, and we've been around the area for quite some time, and I feel as though that this is a great need to help the families that are going to want to stay in Wyandotte County. There is always a mass exodus every now and then whenever these people, the older, the 55 plus communities want to leave. And this, I feel as though, would be a quality project, and I would wholeheartedly ask for your endorsement. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Commissioner Walker.
I don't know how to phrase this exactly. The question that bothers me, I'll use my mother-in-law. I know it's a limited example and it doesn't really stand for anything. She never lived in Wyandotte County. She's from south of Chicago, now lives down here. And when we went looking for senior living for her, she ended up in a place called Brookdale. Now, Brookdale's on 119th Street. We looked at maybe a dozen of those places. And those are all what I would call market rate facilities. Now, I'm wondering where these older people are going when they leave the county because they don't have any choices here. Because none of the places we found in Johnson County had any kind of discounted rate for your level of income. It was all market rate. And it's a pretty good market rate. So if Wyandotte Countyans are leaving to go to Johnson County, they're not finding any economical units out there. So what is the difference in Wyandotte County that compels all of these units to seem to be, a mixed variety of income levels? Why are there not choices for those people that can afford them that are full market rate? Why aren't you building all these at full market rate?
Well, that's a real good question. When we do our analysis, we essentially look at the demand. We look at just like a lender or an investor will come to us, they'll say they're going to commission a market study and they're going to look at a 5-mile radius and say what are the median incomes, what are the average incomes, what is the income distribution, and do their calculations based on the existing demand in that market and do some projections out 5 years. And in our case, we did the analysis. Yeah, there's probably a market. We haven't done the analysis for market rate units, but we're more in the affordable and mixed income housing development business, and we know there's a market there just based on the fact that if this project was built tomorrow, we have 165, and we could probably add more to our list up the street and fill it tomorrow. So I think there is a market out there for market rate, and there is some lighter colored structures on that map that as we get in and test the market, particularly as we have market rate units in the first phase, albeit they're 10 out of the 72, if we can come in and test the market and they fill up fast and we get a waiting list, then we move on to the next phase. I can't make any promises that another phase will happen, but it'll allow us to test the market and go back to our lenders and investors and say, yeah, see, we told you, we tested the market, these 10 market rate units filled up. Let's do another phase. Let's do 30 market rate units because we're only going to do one affordable product. Anything beyond this would have to be market rate.
These other examples that you've given, that you've built, do you set up separate LLCs for each one of those?
Each entity requires a separate limited partnership, but in those limited partnerships, me and my partner who's not here tonight personally guarantee those projects for a minimum of 15 years. So once these projects are developed, for example, Pemberton, we're locked into that project for 15, if not 30 years, so we can't just do the project 5 years later, say, well, we're going to sell out our interest and move on. We're actually locked into these projects for a long time, which is why we spend the extra money up front on exterior, on maintenance, on landscaping, HVAC, energy efficiency, all of those types of things to make it a nice community, so we're not constantly having to maintain it. It's also why we're required by the state and our investors to capitalize very heavily replacement reserves up front, operating reserves, debt service coverage reserves. This project, I think, if our memory recalls, I think it's going to have about $450,000 in reserves just sitting in the bank in case we need it for anything. So there's a lot of reserves up front. It's a quality product, and I think the tax credit projects, listen to some code issues or code discussions earlier. The good thing, in my opinion, about the tax credit projects are, particularly like Pemberton, you have our tax credit investor, which is Boston Capital, who comes out and walks the property every year with their asset managers to make sure it's being maintained. You have the state, Kansas Housing Resources Corporation. They come out and walk the property every year, make sure it's being maintained. Obviously, we do as personal guarantors make sure it's being maintained, which is why we started our own management company. But just to me, having 3 sets of eyes that all have the same vested interest in making sure this property is ran properly, maintained properly, the books are kept properly, annual audits are done properly, cost certifications. There are so many eyes on these projects that to me, it just provides, in my opinion, some extra comfort knowing that there's a lot of people making sure these projects are developed and ran correctly.
All right, thank you.
Mr. Roby, what's the maximum annual income that you can have to be eligible for the affordable housing in the 55?
On the 1 bedroom, it's approximately 33,000. Is that about right? And we can get you the exact numbers, but approximately 33,000. And I think for a 2-bedroom, two-person household, it's approximately 41,000. And that's after backing out. You can back out medical and insurance and those types of things. So there's a way to net down that income. So that's pretty much the cap. And then the rents that we're proposing on this particular project, I always hate saying rents because everything's subject to change based on market conditions, but approximately in the 500 to 950 range. At Pemberton, our market rate units are, I think, 850, and we only have 4 of them there, and they all leased up quickly, and we have a waiting list on those. So that's why we're saying, let's don't just do 4 here, let's do 10, and at the end of the day, we may do more. So there is a growing market out here, and just having lived in the area and watched the development happen out west, it's just amazing. As you guys all know, I'm sure you wake up every morning and go, 20 years ago, 10 years ago, what's happened out in the West Wyandotte County, and it's a great amenity base. Why we like it is because in the senior housing we see seniors, what do they want? If they have family, they want their family to come visit. Well, guess what? The family is going to come visit because they can drop the grandkids off at grandma's, they can go to the casino, they can go shopping, they can go to the ball game, they can go to a soccer game, they can go to water park. There's so many amenities out there. So I think that's what we're going to see, I think, more of. You're going to see seniors when they're making a housing choice, even seniors down in Johnson County, from my standpoint, saying, why should I spend $3,000 a month, $2,000 a month to live at 135th and Row, where I can go to Crate and Barrel. My kids may come, but I can live right across the street from a water park. I can live across the street from the soccer stadium, the new soccer experience that's being built. What a great just amenities out there, I think, to attract the 55 and older and multifamily. Our focus is 55 and older, but again, people are living longer, the average age, at least that's what I'm telling myself as I turn another year. People are living longer and fuller lives, so 55, unfortunately to me, is not that old anymore. It's a good product. We've seen what we've done at Pemberton, and we just want to be a continued part of what's happening out here in West Wyandotte County.
So for all it's worth, I found, and this has nothing to do with their project, but I found the map, since it's a second item, and I'd be glad to show it, but I have it electronically, so I'd have to show it up there.
Could we black the screen here, which would allow her to use her projector?
Well, let's hope so. I mean, we'll see if it can get that far. I think
Okay.
it can. We'll see.
You need to black it. So you're
Yeah, if you could black that out.
Could we just go to black on this screen or go to
Or
blank?
just take the light off of it. It'll work. Hopefully it'll.
I believe it's the down button. I always hit it in class and do that.
Yeah.
Ooh.
Doing it a little bit closer for you. Oh, sorry. I need to all read my emails. So if you have less light, I'm sure you'll be able to see that.
Or we could just walk it closer.
Doug, can you walk it closer since you're closer?
And you're gonna have to walk with it, because I don't think you got that
No, you
thing.
can take the whole thing.
Oh, the whole thing, all right.
It's not plugged in. You just walk it close enough to see it. And then you just have to touch that. Go ahead. There you go. That's good. Good job.
We'll continue to do our AV club. There we go.
And then you can back up a little.
Yeah,
It'll get bigger. It'll get bigger. Go ahead.
All right, you see that?
And I can zoom it in. Hold on. There you go.
Yes, it is.
So everything in green, red, and blue is low-income housing of some sort or another.
Yeah, and I just didn't wanna cut off Commissioner Walter's district where I said there was a cluster over here at the far end of Wyandotte County where that's your district, correct, Commissioner Walter?
Okay, so we'll hand this off to Commissioner Murguia.
So I would just tell you that everything with green, red, or blue, it doesn't matter, is some sort of subsidized housing in Wyandotte County. And that's all of Wyandotte County right there for your point of reference. I just felt it was information that we should have had going into this, but that's fine.
So we've got both low-income housing tax credit projects, as well as housing authority projects, as well as housing that's supported by Section 8 vouchers, correct? All those are on here?
All of them are on there combined.
Okay.
And I agree that there is a difference between low-income or Section 8 housing and low-income housing tax credits. There is a difference, but the bottom line is all of this is income-sensitive housing.
Okay. If you could go ahead and flip the lights back on. Thank you so much, appreciate it. It seems to me that we have, that's right.
I did.
It seems to me that we have two separate but related items here. My understanding is that our current policy is that we as a commission establish the scoring criteria upon which these projects, potential projects, are scored. And if they meet the threshold that we've established, that we really forward these to the full commission from this standing committee. But the related piece to this is, and we've had this discussion before, that the question is, do we want to include things such as density of housing? Do we want to include such things as the effect of the income restrictions, the effect of the rents? Do we want to look at how the money and how the housing density plays out as a factor in our scoring criteria? We've had that discussion, but we've not really ever implemented that or come up with a suggestion on how we can implement that. So
I know exactly where you're going. So I just suggest, these poor people weren't here last month or 2 months ago or whenever we worked on that. So, and we have a policy, it's like Doug said, we said it was a good idea. And so we're left to just saying, we'll see you at full commission. That's what our option is right now. But I do think that the map was worth noting and that we do need to see you come back in front of us with that map like you had intended. And then I think what else would be a good comparison is if we look at places like Leavenworth County and Johnson County, and if we could see what their level of density is with this type of housing. We just want to compare apples to apples. And if everybody looks like that, then we're good. If they don't look like that, because I just Googled Leawood and I looked up to see if there's any LIHTC deals there. There probably are, but according to the internet right now, at least my quick search, there isn't any.
And I totally agree with that we need to bring that map and those data back here as we consider further revisions potential revisions to our criteria and our scoring matrix.
And we need to move swiftly because apparently as soon as the hold on that was lifted, we got two, hopefully, I did not see any more on here tonight.
There are none. There are-
So we got two through right away.
Okay. So separating those two things, the thing that we can take action on tonight is this particular application, and I would go ahead and make a motion that we forward to full commission.
Move for, or second?
All right. There's been a motion and a second to move this project forward. Any further discussion? Yes, ma'am.
Yes, I agree with the motion. Going back to the earlier issue about this point scoring system taking into account concentration of previous existing low-income or LIHTC housing. On property location, I thought we addressed that issue with the need for housing in the area and several other things on here. Low mod census tract. Weren't those additions that were meant to take into account what's already in the area? They would get fewer points if there was already a cluster, more points if there weren't, or maybe vice versa.
I could be
thought we had
mistaken,
taken
but
that
I don't
out.
think our current matrix goes into the kind of detail that Commissioner Murguia and I have been talking about here in terms of looking at the current concentration and actually taking the rents and taking the qualifying incomes into account.
Well, I thought they did, in terms of that's why you would get more or less points on your application.
Well, for example, on our application, it showed in the review guidelines, District 4, which we're in, was an underserved area for this type of housing, and for that, we got, I think, 2 extra points, District 4 and 5. So, whereas where there's more a dense concentration of affordable housing, you didn't get those points. So, there is a kind of an overview of that, but not in the detail like you're talking about. So.
Yeah, but I thought that was the whole motivation for whether you got more or less points on it.
So that will be a continuing discussion we'll have and further clarify the matrix if it's necessary. Yes, ma'am.
So just for clarity, Mr. Bach, can we have this back in front of us at our very next Economic Development Standing Committee with Charles and the map and some comparison? 30 days out should be enough time.
Yeah, and essentially you're just looking to start reviewing the LIHTC policy for next year's round, so.
No, just the concentration.
Well, sure, but I mean, and I think that's what you all commented to this, that this is probably an ongoing evolution of how we set out this program, so.
That's the way it goes.
Charles? We'll just set it up and bring it back next month and see whether there's something there that gets incorporated additional detail into the future application process.
Thank you so much. Yes, ma'am.
The other thing, if we're going to go back and look at the clustering, for lack of a better term, if we're going to do that, I would also like to see when we begin to make these comparisons with outlying districts or other districts, are the income considerations, because I would venture that the incomes in the area we just saw on those maps will probably be lower than incomes in Leawood, let's say, or Johnson County overall. And I think a lot of what we're seeing is driven by who lives here. I mean, you know, Donald Trump lives where he lives, and those of us who are not have to live, you know, someplace decent and appropriate as well. So I think that is another part of the discussion and the dynamic and the evaluation that also has to be considered.
Yeah, so Commissioner Townsend, I hear what you're saying. And I appreciate that too. Lower income people need to have places to live also. They just don't all need to live in the same place in Wyandotte County. It's not good for a neighborhood to cluster a number of poor people all in the same area. It's not good for the median income. It makes it difficult to attract things like grocery stores. That's why the Northeast area is having such a difficult time attracting retail to that area, is that if the median income isn't at a certain level, then retail won't come there without large amounts of government subsidy. So you're right, the area that they're talking about going in tonight is a little higher income, but that's why, in my mind, you have to be cautious. I'm not saying you have to deny, I'm saying you have to be cautious and develop a balance in communities of wealth and poverty. And I'm just saying, right now, by that map, we don't have a balance. And it's creating more and more problems for us when we have that level of concentration. And really, it's the chicken and the egg. Did we bring the poverty? Did we recruit it? Or was it here? I mean, it's just in how you look at it.
Right. Well, as long as we're looking at not just the clustering, but the other situations and circumstances that may make it, I don't want to say desirable, but the reason that we keep getting these types of applications. I mean, people have to live somewhere, and they need decent and affordable housing. So that should be part of the dynamic.
Absolutely, and it will be. We have a motion and a second to move this forward to full commission. Roll call, please.
Roll call. Alvin.
Aye.
Walters.
Aye.
Mergia.
Aye.
Townsend.
Aye.
Walker.
Aye.
McCarron.
Aye. Thank you so much for your presentation.
Thank you.
Happy birthday.
That's right. That brings us to item number 5, which is a joint ordinance and resolution that would adopt the revised Neighborhood Revitalization Act, or NRA plan, as amended. Mr. Brockman.
Move approval.
There's been a motion to approve the NRA plan as submitted.
Second.
There's been a second. Is there any further discussion on the NRA plan? Updates? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Roll call. Alvin.
Aye.
Walters.
Aye.
Mergia.
Aye.
Townsend.
Aye.
Walker.
Aye.
McCarron.
Aye. Mr. Brockman, we do want to thank you for the work that you have put in, you and other staff have put into updating these guidelines. We believe they will be very beneficial moving forward. Thank you for your work. We do now have a blue sheet item number 6 that all the commissioners should have gotten earlier today. Oops, you do now. This is a blue sheet item which is a resolution regarding bonds for sale, and this is Mr. Lou Levin.
Commissioners, last month in December, the commission authorized staff to move forward with our annual bond and note sale financing, and that financing is scheduled for February 5th of this year. As part of our due diligence with our financial advisor, we also look at other opportunities for financings that maybe we can include with our annual bond and note sale. And we have a 2006 bond issue that had 2 parts, and that those bonds are callable after 10 years, and so we can do what's called an advanced refunding of those bonds, and we have the ability to have significant savings with that refunding. And the level of savings, the outstanding debt on those existing bond issues are approximately $24 million. Our total savings with the refundings approximately $1.8 million. And so what I'm asking is for your authority to move forward with including the refunding in that with our annual bond and note sale to achieve those savings. It will also, we'll be able to structure that refunding to create actually some initial savings early on. The refunding will only be a 10-year period of to retire that debt, but it's a real favorable given the low interest environment.
Any comments or any questions for Mr. Levin? Mr. Walker.
Mr. Levin, it's hard to argue with saving $1.8 million, and I don't dispute that will be the case. But does it not follow a pattern that when we do these refundings and these refinancings, that what we do is create space to issue more debt in the future? we're not really saving $1.8 million, because we're gonna spend that $1.8 million over the next 15 years by issuing more debt for projects that we can't cash fund. It's like I go out and get a debt consolidation loan and I pay off all my credit cards. And I've got this low interest loan and I'm making monthly payments, but as time goes on, I go out and buy a new car, I get more credit cards, maybe I buy a piece of property, and all of a sudden, all that savings I was supposed to have achieved in the total debt of the organization is lost unless we don't go out and do any more debt financing. That $1.8 million is never going to show up on your balance sheet, that we can take that money today and go spend it, right?
That's correct. I mean,
So we're not really, what we're doing is we're cutting the interest rate on one bond issue, and unless we develop a bond policy for the future, cash and carry, or, you know, we're only going to issue debt on certain circumstances. If we follow the pattern that's been followed for the last 30 years that I've been around, we're going to continue to issue more debt depending on the interest rate, and this $1.8 million, like every other refinancing, is somewhat illusory.
well, it's not an illusion in that it is a real savings when we issue debt to begin with. We're paying a lower interest rate on the early part of that debt. This is generally so. Each principal payment associated with long-term debt, there's going to be a lower interest rate on the year one, and as you move to the out years, there's higher interest rates. So what you're doing is you're restructuring that debt on your out years, and you're able to achieve a real dollar saving. You're absolutely correct. If you reduce the amount of projects that we move forward in the future, that's really the only way to move away from having debt on the books, and that's something. It's really it's not something you can achieve overnight, but if the commission's committed to really reducing the capital program and the amount of projects it finances with debt, it can certainly achieve that.
All right, put another way, how much money am I going to have to spend next year by refinancing these bonds that on some project that we've talked about that the commission has turned down because we don't have any money? How much additional cash will be in the budget?
My recommendation is not to spend the savings on additional money, but how I look at it from a financial strategic point is we have difficult budget years in 2015 and 2016. Things are going to look better with the payoff of the STAR bonds in early 2017, and I think it will put us in a stronger position to address other needs of the community, especially in 2016.
So these savings you anticipate going into the reserve fund?
I anticipate these savings to be used to address commission priorities for the 2016 budget year.
Okay.
I was just going to add that if Commissioner Walker, if you're proposing we establish a debt policy, I would absolutely second that motion and be up for that. But it's not very politically popular because, as you've stated clearly, all it does is it eliminates our ability to do more projects. And we all know that projects are politically popular. So the minute we want to stop paving a road, or we want to stop building a bridge, or we want to stop doing something like that, which I think, we're going to have to turn this I'm with you. I think we're going to have to turn this vicious cycle around. Unfortunately, you'll never win because people in the community won't like you because things won't get done. And the commissioners are not going to be in favor of that because their constituents won't like them. But just for the public record, I'm all in favor of a debt policy if you're game for that.
I'm game for it, but been game for it. But I just wanted to make sure that I was clear. This $1.8 million, we're never going to see in a fund to do something with.
It'll just be more debt.
It'll just be more debt that now we can issue because we got $1.8 million more to spend on debt financing.
I can.
I mean, that's
one
possible outcome.
I can work with Mr. Bach to explicitly show you in the budget what we're gonna do with those savings for 2016.
Okay.
Yeah, I did want to just comment too, I mean, and you're right if you look at that from the schedule, but the savings is real money, as Lou said. I mean, it is 1.8 million we will spend, that we will not spend, that was on this. And again, I just like to recognize Mr. Levin, Ms. Johnser, who over the last couple of weeks, as we're closing out a lot of books in the finance department, for continuing to look for ways for our government to save money. Because whether we spend it or not, at least we are buying additional projects down the road on this money that was financed. We're not extending the debt, and we're paying less interest over the next 10 years. And those are areas that they jumped on, and I just want to give them kudos for,
And certainly,
as we close in the
if
year end for doing
this was
that.
not a criticism of either of them.
I didn't take it that way.
It's a criticism of the commission. This commission, prior commissions, for this deadly spiral that we are in and have been in for 25 years or more, where we debt finance every single project, unless it's, you know, $100,000, and some of those we throw in, and every year. I mean, there has to come a day. It may not be during my time, but one day this way of economically surviving is going to have to stop. There's only certain people making money out of this deal, and it's always the same people. The bond lawyers, the bond houses. I'm sorry, it's not a good way to continue to do business. You're never out of debt. Just like the guy with the credit cards, you pay them off and then you're back right where you started. And I have some experience in that.
I will mention, attached to the RFA is our debt policy. It was a policy enacted by the commission last December of 2013. And certainly.
And Lou, keep looking for opportunities to save that kind of money, but the commission at some point has to look at a different way of doing business.
Well, there's two of us. You have to start somewhere.
So we've been given a long-term project, but the request for action that is before us tonight is to authorize or approve the resolution for the refunding of bonds.
And also to fast track it to Thursday evening.
And to fast track it to the January 8th full commission meeting.
Second.
There's a motion by Commissioner Walters, a second by Commissioner Murguia. Any additional discussion? Roll call, please.
Roll call. Alvey.
Aye.
Walters.
Aye.
Murguia.
Aye.
Townsend.
Aye.
Walker.
Aye.
Ritter.
Aye.
Reluctant, but aye.
Thank you.
Mr. Levin, Ms. Johnser, thank you very much. We have, that brings us to the end of our commission agenda, and we now move to our public agenda. We have had a request by members of the public to make statements before the commission tonight, and so we will do that at this time. I want to remind everyone that there is no call nor request for action associated with this. It is simply an opportunity for members of the public to address this committee on issues that are of concern to them. I am a little unclear, and Mr. Bland, if I could put my glasses on, I could see you. I'm a little unclear, is everyone who's on my list asking to make a separate comment, or will there be someone who will represent the group?
I think there are two, Rusty Roberts and Randy Wilson.
Okay, so we will have a couple of people who will make comments.
There are five altogether that are in.
There are 5 people who are here all together.
We'll be quick.
Yes, we'll see how good the first two are. And I have a handout. Rusty Roberts to make a presentation, and I have a handout.
All right, if we could have the first person who's going to make a public comment come forward to the podium here in the middle of the room. Our Sergeant at Arms is going to distribute those. And if I could again ask the people who are going to make comment, if you could be sure to state your name and your address for the record. And then in public comment like this, we typically limit the comment to 3 minutes. And so I'll just start my timer. Thank you very much for joining us here tonight.
Hi there. Good evening, Chairman McKern and commissioners and staff. My name is Rusty Roberts. I'm a developer and builder out in western Wyandotte County. Been involved in the community for a long time. I have, and my family has as well. And we, I don't know, you can just cut through all this, but we want to get the building, you know, we're just not competitive on as far as our property taxes go. I brought Randy with me. He can go over the numbers and the details. He's a developer as well in another subdivision. And by the way, I live and work here in Wyandotte County. I guess I'm supposed to say that too. But anyway, we're just not competitive, and we need more incentives to get more people to come to Wyandotte County to buy new homes, to live here, to spend their money here, all the above. That would be our long-term goal as far as building the tax base and so forth. And Randy has a few, he's a builder developer and then 4 other subdivisions in western Wyandotte County, and he also has developments in other cities, and he's familiar with the taxes and the incentives in those subdivisions as well. And anyway, he's here with me, and I got the numbers from him. So.
Hi, my name's Randy Wilbanks, 24070 West 119th Street, Lathrop, Kansas is where I live. Over the past 4 years, I'm president of Heartland Ventures and Pinnacle Construction, and we have 3 developments that we've done in Wyandotte County in Piper, Newberry at Piper. We have Pavilions at Piper, and we have bought quite a few lots out at Highlands at Piper. And what we're here to address is there's been some incentive and a moratorium on some of the hookup fees and the building permit fees that we've had the advantage of over the past 2.5 years. And I appreciate you letting us come and speak, because I think this is very vital to kind of the future of what we're able to do. Specifically for the companies that I represent, we've put on the tax rolls over the last 3.5 years about $18 to $19 million worth of property. And over the next, I guess, 10 years, county, or I guess county, I don't know how it's all split up, but it's about $350,000 a year that will come into the coffers because of the property that's being built. I think there's 2 things, and I'll try to limit myself to 3 minutes, but I think there's the longer term aspect. We started off 3 years ago probably with 10% of what we did in Wyandotte County. We're currently at 85% of all the building that we do is in Wyandotte County. We think long term it makes sense. We like what's going on in Wyandotte County. I think it's imperative long term that property taxes get reduced. And when you compare it with other areas, and I'm talking all other areas, whether it be Basehor, Shawnee, Lenexa, Olathe, the tax rates in Wyandotte County are about 20 to 25% higher on single family new construction. And for someone buying a home, that translates it to, over the life of the mortgage, about $35,000 more to live in Wyandotte County than really any other county, any of the surrounding counties. So when we look to build a home, and the price range we're building, our average house I think is about $275,000. That's about the average house that we build. For someone to come in and purchase that home, they're going to spend an extra $150 to $200 a month on their mortgage for the right to live in Wyandotte County versus another county on the same tax basis for the house, the same cost of the house. So I think that this incentive that we have cuts that difference into about half. If you look at, we're able to build a house a little more cost effective here, and that would save somebody an average of $50 a month. Their taxes will still be $100 more a month higher, but it helps bridge the gap. It helps put it on a level playing field. And I think from a long-term basis, and hopefully when the STAR bonds get paid down, and hopefully there can be a reduction long-term in taxes, but until then, on a short-term basis for incentives and the ability to attract people here for housing, I think it's imperative that we have a level playing field. And I think to continue to invest and continue to build homes, I think that we need to at least have a fair shot at getting people to move here. And we're talking about attracting people from, the Cerner people come in, they can live in Shawnee, they can live in Exeter, they can live in Wyandotte County. So I think it's important that we have somewhat of a level playing field. And I think by extending this, at least we give ourselves the best possible chance of doing that. And I think that in addition to that, and the last thing I'll say is it makes economic sense. It's not that the investment will come back about sevenfold. So, if $10 million worth of property over the next year or two gets put on the tax rolls that wasn't on the tax rolls due to these incentives, then over a 10-year period, $3 or $4 million in property taxes be collected. So it's not as if it doesn't come back, and that's really the essence of I guess what I have to say is that I think it's working. We're still only getting about 4% of the housing market, even though if you look at the single, citywide we're getting 4% when you should have 8% of the households. So I think there's still opportunity for growth, and I would certainly like to see the policies that we've had in place for the last 2.5 years to continue, because I think it'll continue to foster investment, and I think it's investment that will come back.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that presentation.
If I might, I would just like to echo the experience at the BPU. We, again, at the initiative of the unified government and developers, Rusty and others, the BPU also waived its hookup fees, and we think we've seen, even though we've foregone those fees, we believe it is actually going to help us in the long term, creating more demand for water and power. And so the initial investment or loss of funds is going to be more than compensated for by additional demand in the future. So $100,000 is $100,000, no doubt, but I think it really has had an effect, and I wish I brought some of the data we've collected, have seen an improvement in a number of permits that have been issued, housing permits. So.
Yes, sir.
Hello, Steve Vandenberg, 11908 West 64th, Shawnee, Kansas. I'm one of the developers of Piper Landing. It's on 115th and Kimball. We did 46 lots in the first phase and only sold about 8 of those back around 2007. And then things got really slow and we couldn't sell nothing. And then when this incentive program kicked in, since then we've sold about, I think we've built and sold at least 25 houses in the last 2 years. And a big part of it is this incentive of these building permit fees and hookup fees and wastewater, everything. But we just like to encourage the commission to not take them away. I think the lack of the fee is expired the first of the year or something. I don't know exactly, but it's just a big part of our business. We like it up there. We just opened a new phase with 39 more lots. 8 of them are sold, and we got strong interest. We're only a mile from the Speedway, and we have really strong interest from Cerner and the racetrack or the casino people. Of course, with several fire department people and firemen and, you know, people that live there, that work here. That's all I had to say. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
I don't know where, you know, you deserve a response, and I'll give you mine. Mine is to incent the building of single-family homes. And my reasons probably aren't exactly what you want to hear. I too agree that we ought to, you know, we need to reduce taxes. It's a hard thing to do. When you go through our budget, there's not a lot of money in there. There's no money in there to play with. There's no, let's have some kind of special project. But one thing I like about the home building industry is that, okay, we incent you with these waiver of fees, but when you build a $300,000 house, it is assessed as a $300,000 house, and then you pay taxes on a $300,000 house. When we incent a $120 million building, it pays taxes on a $30 million building because they have some special nuance that they think the building can't be sold and reused. I like to see houses built and pay their fair share of taxes. Now, I heard what you said, and you think you pay more than your fair share of taxes on these houses. And I really want to do something about that, like every one of the commissioners, and I'm sure the Board of Public Utilities people feel the same way about their rates. But I don't oppose continuing an incentive program, and we'll address that when this item is brought before us, I assume, in some manner, Mr. Bach, or will this come up again for continuation?
The policies that set out sunset at the end of 2014. We certainly can reconsider it, and you know, it's one of those items that's somewhat built into the budget. Well, not somewhat, we did build it in the budget. That's when it was adopted initially a couple of years ago, because we set out to drop the fees from what was anticipated to be collected. For the 2015 budget, we anticipated those fees coming back online. We can consider it again as we go through our budget process. If this is something we want to remove and we feel like this is a good incentive, you know, we can factor it in either looking at our sanitary sewer or the wastewater program, because that's an enterprise fund and that's an area that they could be waived from, which is similar to like the BPU looks at it. And then the other side is the building permit fees that's paid to the general fund. So we can put that on the list for items of consideration.
So I'm just going to take the opportunity to make a comment and kind of piggyback off what Hal said earlier with his concerns about debt, is that for years our government has had this credit card and we just keep charging more and more and more to it. And it's gotten completely out of hand, and now it's gotten to the point where we've maxed our debt out and there really is no more debt to issue. We can't take any more, so now every year we have to figure out how much we can spend based on the debt we've paid off. It's ridiculous. And I can remember prior to running for office listening to these kinds of conversations and the whole discussion seeming very complex and something that I couldn't understand. So I really do this for the benefit of people that are watching this, if there is anyone that watches this. God love them. I would just say that I agree with what Commissioner Walker said, that we need to reduce the debt of this government, and we also need to lower property taxes. I am very proud to say I've been up here 8 years and I have never voted for a property tax increase, and I never will. And the only way we can do those two things is lower our debt and lower our property taxes, is to grow our community. And so I am a very big advocate of incentives for growth and development, because that ultimately is going to broaden our tax base. And I do trust in our staff to make sure that we're not throwing too much incentive at a development where the benefits of the development far outweigh any kind of negative that we could incur because of the incentive. So I just want to say it out loud. I'm glad that we have been a commission so far, and I hope we'll continue to be a commission that supports these kinds of incentives.
And I believe we had another person who wanted to make a comment. Yes,
Yeah,
sir.
my name is Phil Martin.
If you'll hang on for just a second, Mr. Bach.
And Commissioner, you've especially asked me to do this, just for the record, we have not maxed out our debt. We're not in that kind of financial situation. So while for how much money we want to contribute to paying off debt each year is a policy we need to get into, but we have room under our debt cap. We're not maxed out.
Right, but when we wanted to add projects.
As far as much as
If
we want to spend on debt.
Right,
each
let me
year.
rephrase that. Unless we want to lower our bond rating, we are not going to spend any more, we're not going to ching up any more debt.
That's a good way to say it.
Right, unless we want to ruin our credit rating, then we cannot spend any more money on our credit card. And I do appreciate you clarifying, so that people out there that hear it have the facts.
Yes, sir.
Okay, my name is Phil Martins, Martins Family Enterprises, address 7362 West 162nd in Overland Park. And my deal, to add on to your comment, is to do more stuff with more money is to add more homes. And you got a bunch of crazy guys in here that are crazy enough to build in Kansas City when tax base is a little higher, but they still love Kansas City, Kansas to be building here. I've been building 10 years up here in Kansas City, Kansas, and I thought I'd never build up here. But once I have, I love the community, and I love what it states, and I think there's a lot of room for expansion. But to do that and to help with the tax base is what we're talking about is the $2,500 sewer connection fee and the permit fee, which is $400. So you got $2,900 that we're asking for to continue, not costing a dime, just to continue what we're doing for at least another year, possibly two, depending on building permits. Because we were at we built it clear up to 600 a year when we were going in steady pace. Then we fell back down, so there's got to be a room in there to where we can all feel comfortable enough to help with the incentive to build in KCK and to make it to where we can get that tax base up. Because even some of the projects tonight, I mean, that is definitely going to help in the long run versus some of the other guys in the room here that build a lot of houses. Randy builds a lot of houses, Dave builds a lot of homes, and like I say, it is a challenge to build up here, but you know, they're taking the added risk and being somewhere that's basically what I classify pioneering in an area that it is. And you know, since 2005, people thought I was crazy. But the thing is now we're 10 years down later, and you know, there's actually a few of us that did survive through the economy and the big turndown. So, you know, asking for this to be extended for another year, possibly two, would be great. The problem is it's already been expired. So basically, we're gonna have to wait until something happens in the city to where we can figure out whether we're gonna get the incentive or not get the incentive. So don't think the building permits right now are gonna happen in January and February and March, depending on how long you wanna take this. The BPU is already taken care of their end. They were way ahead of the curve and made a decision prior to that time. Now we're on we're in a waiting pattern on what's gonna happen here. So whether it not being on the agenda or we're just talking about it tonight, I think talking about fast track, I think you need to fast track this immediately if you want the permits in January, February, and March when we get into the building season. Thank you.
So I'll follow up what I said earlier. Although there is no formal request for action tonight, you've given us perspective and you've given us information that if commissioners choose to do, they can follow up and have a continuing discussion with staff. And I wouldn't rule out the possibility that there could be a request for action that could come from this in the future.
Yes, sir. Thank you for your time.
Yes, ma'am.
So I just have a question, Commissioner McKiernan. I never really thought that out, that it would put them on hold, and that makes a lot of sense. Why would they take the risk and for more money? So is there a way, Doug, is there a way for us to come to consensus on this incentive prior to budget?
Sure. I mean, you just have to take a decision that you're going to, you can make a decision to continue it or start it up again by ordinance. You know, I know it's one where you've discussed not making budgetary decisions out of budget, but that's what it would be. I mean, it'd
It's
be
for next year though, right? So
no, it's for 2015. I mean, and as he said, it's about $100,000 impact on our budget, so I mean, it's,
I understand.
it's an estimate from that standpoint, as to what would come in.
Well, it builds 25 homes, you know.
The return on the investment is amazing.
I think what ought to be done, and since I don't sit on this committee and somebody else will next month. Well, I mean, I'm taking my shot while I'm sitting here, okay? I'd like to see a proposal that reinstates the, or lifts what we did and re-incentivizes home building by waiving these permits. Now, this committee would have to address that next month, and then they would fast track it to the commission. You guys don't want to do it, or you do want to do it, it's your decision. But if we wait around, you know, until budget season, they're going to lose the whole building season.
Could it not be fast-tracked to this Thursday's meeting?
Well, typically it's worked through a committee. We don't have a document to look at, but Mr. Bach?
And do you have $100,000? I guess we should ask that question.
I'm just asking, I don't know.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, your issue, your work with there is we work on revised budgets each year. I mean, and I know that's an issue where we're trying to get away from making budgetary decisions outside of the budget, because that makes a big impact on why the revised budget always comes back so different from what the previous years. This commission has probably been the most disciplined we've had through the course of the last few months in not making budgetary decisions out of it. And I'm not saying, I mean, $100,000 huge decisions. There's a couple of variables that you could look at, some that could have less impact on the general fund. You know, as he noted, the largest impact here on developers is that what's coming through our water pollution fee. So, I mean, you could, what is it, the $400 or $600 building fee versus the $2,500 hookup fee in water pollution, which is not our general fund, would have a bigger impact on the developers and a no impact on our general fund. So there are things like that you could look at for consideration, you know, if you wanted to consider keeping this in play.
So can you meet with this group and figure out some options and bring them back to us by next committee meeting so that we could then fast track it?
We could. I don't know that I have to do a lot of meeting with them, probably. I mean, I know what their objective is, and I probably can identify, as I just did, what the two biggest options are, and one affects our water pollution enterprise fund, and the other impacts our general fund, and that's the building fee.
Again, I don't know how this works, but is it possible that you outlined, I think, two options about how to handle this, that you could offer two different resolutions and fast track this to Thursday and then let the commission decide between the options? I don't know.
I don't either. I mean, I'm really genuinely asking. I know I'm a big advocate, like I said, of broadening our tax base. I mean, every discussion we have is about how can we have more money to do more good things for our county, and the only way to do that, unless someone else here knows, is to grow our county with business or residential. And here we have people willing to do it, and for $100,000, we're holding them up. I don't know what to do with that.
I'm the guy that's all for this, and I'm going to say the problem with doing it tonight, we've given the public no notice. It has not been on an agenda.
Sure.
And I would say that while I don't think there's going to be any large public outcry, if there is opposition to this, we did not agenda this as anything to take action on. We need to have it on an agenda.
That's correct, and that's the policy we've followed since consolidation.
So, as much as I'd love to do it tonight and vote it up Thursday myself, I think we may have to, you know, I mean, you might be able to put this on Public Works. I mean, it sort of fits because it is a public work waiver, fee waiver.
Oh,
And put
that's
it
a
on
good idea.
for the 15th. Isn't the 15th the next meeting? No, 19th. 19th, and then we could fast track it to the following Thursday.
That's a
Good
I
idea.
mean, that would give them a few weeks, not 3 or 4 weeks less time.
Is there going to be a meeting, I'm sorry, on the 19th? Isn't that a holiday?
Well, then the committee meeting will be on
Yes,
Tuesday
it
then,
is.
I guess. Whenever the next Public Works Standing Committee, I think
Well-
that's the night, it won't be MLK Day, it'll be the Tuesday after, right?
I guess one of my questions would be to the developers, if you did not have that incentive in place until, let's say, the first meeting in February, you would have zero.
There'll be zero permits. There'll be zero permits.
And you want to get the permits pulled in case we get some good warm weather again.
I think, without taking.
If you could come back up to the if you could come back up to the microphone, just because this is on television, we want to make sure everyone can hear you.
Okay, should address better. Just to kind of highlight what Mr. Walker said, which I think is absolutely correct, and he's done the math in his head, but, 25 houses total, just in 1 year would pay the incentive back. And then, of course, you have the tax base on an ongoing basis for year after year after year. I think that for us, and I don't want to speak for everybody, but, I think as soon as this is adopted, I know in my own organization, we probably have 8 or 9 permits that will be pulled. And I think that, you don't want to be in limbo for a real long period of time. And part of that is because of timing. We want product to be available to sell in, really the May through October on a selling season is when you want your product. And to be able to do that, we need to get started as quickly as possible. So I think speed is imperative, but also understand that you have procedures that you have to follow. But we would just like it to be, if there's any way possible, to be fast-tracked just as expeditiously as it can. So.
I think I agree with where he's going. Since we are shown that we're entertaining this, you have to bring closure to it one way or another. I mean, that's either say yes or no. And then they can make their decisions on build. Right now, where they think there's a possibility, as anybody would, if you think something's going on sale in a couple of weeks, you'll hold out unless you got a buyer that's just absolutely saying get in the ground.
Right.
You got to bring closure to it now, probably based on what's happened. So we have to go yes or no to them and move it from there.
So then, in that case, we're looking for a motion on a request for action that would come forward out of this meeting.
To Public Works Standing Committee, if we can do that.
The committee doesn't set that. I think this is information that we can take. We could have that discussion with the Public Works Chair and the mayor as far as an agenda item going forth there. I mean, we have the data on this, so we can show, there's comparable data that any committee would look at, I would assume you would, that shows, here's where we are. That's some of the information we looked at in comparison to what our fees are compared to other communities. Look at the ramifications from a cost. This being on this committee versus Public Works is largely driven because it's financial tag to it, and that's why all these items typically come to this committee. But we can take that forward.
So Doug, is the impact to the general fund that you keep talking about strictly a building permit processing fee?
Yeah, I think that's most of what comes off the general fund side of it. The biggest portion of it is what goes to water pollution. Yeah, it's the much more significant one, which I would assume any developer looking at that, if they were to see that waived, it would probably be a bigger impact to them than the general fund portion of it.
Commissioner
So,
Townsend?
that kind of gives you an incremental opportunity too.
I would like to see part of the information that comes to us, or whether it's the other standing committee. I think when I came on, the first budget we went through, this was the $100,000 fee the waiver was part of it, and then it went away in 2015. But I would like to see where the money that we're talking about, the $100,000, is replenished or surpassed somewhere. We're talking about where it may come out of the general fund or whatnot. And we're talking about the benefit that would accrue to the new housing starts. And actually, this seems like it's the other side of the conversation we had earlier with the LIHTC. So it is important to get the market rate, the more upscale too. But as part of the analysis, I would like to know, just for my edification, where the stream of money is coming from if we give this waiver. We're talking about the money that would come in. How do we see that? And maybe we could look at how that happened or what came in the last budget cycle when this waiver was there. Understand?
I fully understand. You know, the issue with that is, if I were to ask Lou to come up and say identify $100,000 today, he's going to tell me that's coming out of the reserves. You know, I can't identify to you that I have $100,000 excess in some other area today, unless we were to make a decision we're not going to fund something. But I think that's premature that we would make that decision. We just have to recognize we're not going to count on that revenue stream when we're building our budget, and we do a revised budget in the course of the summer. And everything moves in big margins, I guess, when you're starting to come around. We have a $300 million budget. So $100,000 doesn't break us one way or another. It's all the incremental $100,000 that we've probably over the years made decisions on through the course of the year that then comes back to be 3 or 4 million. And if we don't look at that and say, what's the impact of that, then that makes a decision, or makes an impact on our decision.
No, actually, what I'm really interested in is the income that came into our coffers in the past when we've had this $100,000 housing waiver or fee waiver. We're talking about that. We're talking about increasing our coffers as a result of that. Is there some way to track what we gain from having this fee waiver when it was last in effect?
How many houses were built that can now pay taxes?
Right. Or similar. And the amount, not just the number, what is the amount? What is the income stream that accrue to us because we waive these fees? Is there any way to?
Well, and it's probably a little bit of a judgment on that, Commissioner, based on how many, and that's kind of the big question that's attached to it. How many would have come anyway? You know, we started the program because we believed, and that's why we had the conversation with BBU, we believe we needed to do something to help incentivize the housing market to get going. And
Well, how many did come, though?
we have that stat. We can give you the total number of houses built.
But I would just say, I see what you're trying to get at, and it makes sense, but it's not quite that easy because,
nothing we do apparently.
yeah, no, it's
So
not
that's-
easy. It's not that easy because,
But we
to
talk
rile-
about this in general terms and what comes in, so I'm thinking it would be relatively easy to have those stats. We've had this waiver in the past, so I would think there would be some numbers to say that while this waiver was in effect, X number of homes availed themselves of that fee, and those X number now pay taxes that are equivalent to.
Yeah, so let's say, I'll just make up a hypothetical example. So and tell me if I'm right, Doug, on this, because I want to make sure I have this right. But like, for example, last year we had this incentive, and Doug would just pull the number of building permits pulled or the number of housing permits pulled. That might be 50, let's say. But there's no way to tell you that if that incentive was not there, that 50 permits would not have been pulled. 50 permits might have been pulled regardless. We're just playing on a hunch that when you incent development, you get more of it. And there's arguments on both sides. I'm trying to give you a objective argument on either side. I would tell you, I would argue all day long that the more you incent people to come work in your community, the more business, the more residential you're going to get. Some people disagree with that. And what I think Doug is saying is that's hard to measure because you don't know if you wouldn't have given the incentive, what you would have because you gave it. Does that make sense?
Well, but was there a time when we didn't give the incentive? We could pull those housing starts and at least make that comparison. maybe when we didn't have it, there were only 30 permit.
Right,
So,
right, that could have been the deal, but it also could be prior to Village West, it could be during the recession, but yeah, we could get
but
the
it's something
numbers.
to look at.
Yeah, it's something better than nothing.
So we do have some data coming around.
Oh, very good.
Stanley, you want to go ahead and put that up on the screen?
And these are some of the data that Commissioner Townsend really had just been inquiring about.
Doug, what year did we have first year we have this incentive?
I believe it was 2012, 12 and 13. Half of 12. Yeah, I believe that's right. After we did the budget in 12, we adopted it. It started effectively, went through that fall, and then it was there for 13 and 14.
Wasn't that an incentive we set up to help
Well, that's what you see it there.
strike up residential development after the recession? Was that our thinking?
Yes.
Okay, that's point of reference.
And you can see by this chart, you know, well, and this chart even references it there, the permits that are on waiver. So when we put it in place in 2012, we had a project that came online and took advantage of it or utilized it to pull a bunch of permits right off the bat and then moved on. So you can see the, you know, I think all the data you're after that you've been talking about corresponds with the number of projects that are on there that, yeah, we're a long ways from where we were back in 2005 and 6. To give a little bit more historic reference to that though, pre-2000, like in 1999, we were around that 100 number. So I mean, you see the dip that comes from the recession that just hit us hard and dropped us way down, and then we've just now risen back up from where we were around the turn of the century.
I think you also have to look at that period post-Speedway being built, maybe closer to 4, 5, 6, and 7, where they were just giving money away to people who 25 years ago couldn't have bought a house, 125% of loans, you know, the various financing devices that were used that made money a little easier to get a mortgage for. I'd love to see us up at 400 houses again. I don't believe that's going to happen, but I can see us going up to 200. You know, with a little luck and these incentives, you know, it's just hard to compare 05, 6, and 7 to 12, 13, and 14 because the money isn't as easy to get.
The numbers are also up here, as you'll see. And now this is the combination between the building permit and sewer connection fees waived. I believe the $100,000 number that's thrown around out there is more of the general fund impact versus what the total impact is, because I believe we built our estimate based on the 2013 numbers. Well, yeah, because we would have done that last May. So we were looking at around 140 homes or something like that. I'd have to back into the calculation, but I believe that's where that came from.
Thank you. This is certainly helpful as a point of reference.
So I guess the question that's still before us is if we want to take action or give direction following this meeting up for a future meeting, whether that be Public Works in 2 weeks or our committee in a month from now or something other than that entirely.
I'd move for staff, this to go back to staff to kind of follow the direction that we've talked about tonight. And then for Doug to have a discussion with the mayor and the chairman of Public Works to see the best, most appropriate committee for it to go back in front of.
Second.
That works. So there's been a motion and a second to take this information back to look at, anyway.
What Ann said.
Yeah, what Ann said, that's right. Any further discussion on that? We will take a roll call on that, please.
Roll call. Alvey.
Aye.
Walters. Murgia.
Aye.
Townsend.
Aye.
Walker.
Aye.
McCarron.
Aye. Thank you very much. That information will go back. Staff will work with commission, and our goal is to bring that to Public Works Standing Committee, which would be in 2 weeks from tonight.
2 weeks in a day.
2 weeks in a day. That is our last item of business tonight. We are adjourned. Thanks, everyone, for attending.